ghostly mark. Cobwebs twine and shadows dance in this twilight somber trance. Candles flicker, weary wicks, ancient echoes, time's cruel tricks. Marble figures, frozen pose, amidst the silent sorrow grows. Whispering shadows, secrets keep in the depths where night meets sleep. Underneath the velvet gloom, guardians of the haunted room. Chandeliers in crystal tears reflect forgotten yesteryears, softly chanting distant cries. Through the arches sorrow sighs. Gargoyles watch with stony gaze, guardians of endless maze. Pipe organ's breath begins to rise, filling air with mournful ties. Whispering shadows, secrets keep in the depths where night meets sleep. Underneath the velvet gloom, guardians of the haunted room.
Live. I'm a mechanical.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This Lady Red of the Black Pants Legion, and Lictor reassuring us that he is in fact mechanical.
Of course I am. Look at me. I have a crab.
You do have a crab, little crab on your shoulder.
I have a psychic crab talking to me. Even my eyes are glowing with the control of the crab machine.
This is very true. The correct colours. Hello, chat. How are you? How is everybody? Other than just, yes, praise the Omnissiah and possibly also Necron Machine Code. Who knows? Gripe about the damn children who were born in the last 30 years? I mean, yeah. Don't even get slang right these days. Necron's best?
We will find out. We will find out. This remains to be seen. The fate of the Necron remains in the balance.
Yes, we have known for some time that in the 40k game we're playing with Lictor as GM, there is a monolith in the system that we're in. It has not, as yet, been an active thing we've had to deal with, but I'm certain that's going to change at some point.
What do you mean it has been? It has been sending you spam mail for a while now.
We haven't confirmed definitively that that's the case, though. Though, yes, I have had that suspicion for quite some time. Like, oh no.
Someone is sending you spam mail.
We do get some interesting spam mail in this game. Some of it is ominous. Some of it is hilarious. Some of it is just spam.
Some of it is how to go to a certain pet shop and get things that you might need.
Indeed. I am very much looking forward to game tomorrow. Oh, right. I see many of the usual faces are here. We have Orc Slayers and Digiman and Night Owl and Zork is here and Introspective and Ed and Eric and Wilf and yeah, Night Owl and everybody. Everybody is here, which is
Yeah.
very, very nice.
There's a lot of good people. Oh, Grimos is also here.
Grimos is also here, and there's been many hat births because it is technically my birthday tomorrow, but you know, this is as near as never mind. This counts, so it's technically a birthday stream. And, you know, it's lovely to spend it with wonderful community.
Does that mean you automatically become slightly more bear-like?
I don't know. Quite possibly. I will have to let you know tomorrow.
Do you get bear arms because of birthday?
I am in America, so I have the right to bear arms, so probably.
I mean, if anybody does, I don't have the right to bear arms. I need digs for that.
We'll have to ask him nicely. We have some big stream streaks in chat as well. 245 from Digiman, and over 300 odd from Eric. 370 from Erica, which is just insane. But we're very happy that you guys get to be here. Does Red get bonuses during the 40k game since she got a real life level up? I get bonuses in the 40k game because I keep pestering Lictor week in, week out about nonsense to do with my character.
I mean, look, tomorrow you might have a pet.
It would be very nice if that happens. Though, of course, the pet won't be for me. It's for the elf.
I have 25 entries of pets possible. One of them might be useful. All of them have traits and levels of talents that you can take with them because I got inspired and now we have a pet system in the game.
All this because I happen to remember that Gyrinxes exist.
I currently have a pet. She has a talent for being adorable.
And
also causing chemical warfare and being just a menace.
Orc Slayer says, if the pet is an elf, it means you can have additional pets. The pet situation on board the Pride of Clappenheim has gotten kind of complicated because technically, according to the paperwork, I have a pet elf. However, if you ever see a training session between my character and the pet elf, he's definitely not the pet, and my character may or may not be clicker trained.
I don't think he's using clicks. He's using
No, he's using food rewards, though, so it's basically the same thing.
No, the food rewards are absolutely correct, but the ear twitching operates on much the same level as clicker training.
See? Erica says a monolith sending spam emails is hilarious. It'd be like the Omnissiah started using the Astronomicon to display ads and started bothering astropaths with crank calls. Funny you should mention that!
I'm not. I can neither confirm nor deny the Morian. The Morian heresy had not been a problem with the Astronomicon sending out spam mail and crank calls.
See, Digiman, we're go on.
The Mechanicum falling for its own bullshit and lapping up. I mean, just imagine the Mechanicus working out ShamWows after thousands of years of attempting to replicate this miracle technology that would wipe out stains with a single brush of a towel.
My God.
Tishuban said, I think if your pet has sapience, that technically makes it a kink. We got around this in the easiest way. I didn't kidnap an elf, I stole him. Therefore, due to grammar and complicated things, it's fine. Everything's fine. We did not kidnap an elf, we stole him.
Well, of course, it's a Xeno, which means it's not a person, it's a thing.
Do we need to have the conversation again?
No, but I do need to reboot my computer because my graphics card driver just crashed.
Oh no, you go do that.
I'm going to say to okay, anyone getting to this navigator will need his extended warranty. The navigators on the Clappenheim are terrifying.
Yes.
That's, I mean,
Just yes,
Sure.
quite a lot of things on the Claffenheim are terrifying, but in the best way.
yes, the chef.
The chef is
The chef.
fantastic.
He does the
We
most
definitely need to
excellent
do a
deep
comic
dish.
project next year. We have to do the
We
comic
will.
project.
We will. I don't know if you've noticed. I've started collecting
Collecting
material.
references, yes, and we have some very adorable chibi reference material. Is there a book that lets me play as a Necron in 40k that is not the armies I haven't looked in forever?
Yes. But
You go ahead.
I'm going to say that there is an excellent extension for the last game, not Imperium Maledictum, Wrath and Glory, for the Necrons that I used extensively, and it works wonders. In the last 40k Rogue Trader campaign I ran, the Necrons were the middle problem before the elves became the real problem. And they had, and I used the Necrons extensively. So in Wrath and Glory, they absolutely slap.
Excellent. Oh yeah, there you go. We have an answer. You can play Necrons. We definitely don't have a Necron on board our ship. Steve Human is just a totally normal human, and this is fine. The fact that he has the really cool green rave sticks that's normal. It's fine.
I mean, look, he has, considering your protein bars.
Yeah.
Okay, he's just using leftovers. Okay.
We're going to have to put him, if we ever do comic strips that have, like, a crowd in the background, Steve just needs to be randomly inserted in any given crowd.
Yeah, like where's Waldo?
Yes, exactly. Night Owl says I need to get some lozenges before I play Dark Tide with Puzzle again. Enjoy the lozenges. May they help. I hope you have fun, Orc Slayers.
Dark Tide currently has an invasion of mech twinks.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Just oh boy.
And look, they added Skitari.
They did.
And I love me a good Skitari, but goddamn, do they make them skinny?
We love a bad Skitari as well, because what would our game be without Incubus Bones?
He's no longer a Skitari.
I know, that's why he's bad at it.
Yes. he got his Megas annihilated at some point.
And he is fantastic. We owe him some pickled orbs.
You do owe him.
All right, so we've had a good sort of 15 minutes of just hello wittering, which is pretty normal. This week I'm doing something a little bit different. I am currently in the middle of trying to smash my way through all the pieces for next video, in vein of last video. So I have not had time this week to write any more Shoal. We also had the wonderful Storm Song over to visit and stay with us, who was sadly left this morning, which is very, very sad, but he is on his way off back into the wild blue yonder and heading back homewards. So, it's been a bit of a week, and I hope you enjoyed, if you were here yesterday, the 7-hour-long Lost Odyssey stream, which managed to meet the kids at the end of it and then go no further. So you were all genuinely spared the worst of that game. But, it means not a huge amount has gotten done this week in terms of Shoal stuff, which is a shame. But I have
to stop you over one. I did do some research regarding Shoal this week.
Oh, what did you do?
I have had the question. Do you remember the Crimson Whirl?
Yes.
We've discussed. And I have often described it as having underwater lightning happening, though.
Yes.
Well, I've researched if you could actually make that happen, given, a few leniencies of hand wavium. And apparently I figured out a new weapon system for Titans.
Oh boy.
Because apparently, if you do want to make lightning underwater, what really happens is essentially supercavitation, but also plasma and flash of light and extreme conversion of heat. So if you do have a capacitator that can unleash fast enough underwater, you essentially can make a power fist in Shoal, Titan-sized.
Oh boy. You have Zork's undivided attention, I think. As well as Ed and Orc Slayers.
It's super.
Zork.
It's not
Ha! My super cavitation cannon concept is vindicated.
not correct. You won't get you're not going to get a supercavitation cannon, but you can mount it on a shell that you can transition slowly through the water, and when it hits, it causes a supercavitational collapse on target. That would absolutely wreck anyone's day.
Yeah.
That would be what I would consider when the Forge Wars are coming on the have divine attacks Mercury Alpha. Yes, they do. They do have divine attacks. They cause radiant damage. The point is that if we decide that would use electro, who has the best? Chat, who has the best electrical material engineering by the end of the Forge Wars? I am hesitating to say I don't think it's the crabs. It probably is either the cephalinids or the laticals because of their access to
Yeah, Ladicals probably would have had the opportunity to study, above water lightning.
Exactly. Could be the snails, probably both. I think what happens is the laticals come up with the idea because their study of electricity is a lot more profound, being above water.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Zork, for thank you. Now we have the subject surrounded. We've suggested every possible answer. Yeah, the subject surrounded. So let's assume that the Laticals had the stupid genius to work with lightning, and then they showed it to some of the podlings that are working on their side of the story. And when it ended, they mounted an absolutely stupid amount of galvanic resin that drew power directly from the Titan's power core, and it probably completely and utterly annihilated the armature it was constructed on. But eventually what happens is that you have a fist that you ram into someone, and you click a button, and whomever you've had your fist rammed into ceased being a problem, not without much regard to things like armor or ablative capacity or depth or anything. And that probably freaked the ever-living daylights out of everyone. Not necessarily just the pilots. It probably freaked the the Temp's coral cores were annihilated in such a fashion that it burnt out the Temps as well, making it a truly terrifying.
So does that mean that this weapon is now banned and is considered a war crime?
I think it counts as. I need chat to help me out with that one. I don't know if it automatically counts as a war crime because killing people is part of a job.
Yes.
Yes, Corbin. Yes, Corbin.
But killing a Temps coral is a specific level of, oh god, beyond that.
True, but it's a Temps coral that exists within a Titan, which is
It's
a
true.
legitimate target in and by itself.
It's true.
Okay, Zorg has a point. Using it against Titans is okay. It could affect a war crime, but it's not necessarily a war crime.
Okay.
And yes, using it against Leviathans, and most importantly, since this thing has no psionic interface, this thing can work in silent zones without targeting, which is incredibly important to.
Yes, that makes it very useful.
It's the sort of stuff that you think about it. It usually annihilates whatever thing is carrying it, and it has to be directly connected to the power core of a Titan to operate.
Yeah.
You need a fusion reactor to get it to. So you don't have that on a missile. It's too expensive. But you also don't have a lot of it because it severely damages whatever is using it at the moment. So now
it's going to
we
be a
have
highly
the-
specialized weapon, which makes sense and is good. Because if everybody has these, then this becomes a problem.
Exactly. I think it kind of turns into a melee-only arrow 4 sort of a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can have it. You probably should have it in your arsenal if you can afford it, but by Seamoth and all of its various dances, it is owie. Yes, Night Owl.
Corbin, I don't trust you with a goddamn gerbil, let alone something like this. No, you can't have one. I'll be building it either way if it's legal or not for my mechs. I mean, I can't stop you. Every anti-Leviathan squad has one for a last chance Hail Mary. That would be good. The gerbil already being dead proves the point, Corbin.
Corbin, you don't want atomic gerbils scurrying for your orbs. Atomic Gerbils was a game I developed when I was 16, and it revolved around a series of tables that were based over me watching Pinky and the Brain.
Oh, amazing.
Like gerbils.
I saw the Atomic Gerbils at Lincoln Theatre in 97. Excellent, Samurai. Who were they opening for?
Night Owl, as an artilleryman, let me tell you, everything belongs in melee range when your artillery is big enough. The only problem, the only problem you have is just sometimes you also have to be in melee range, and then it becomes your problem.
Alrighty. That's
Okay.
pretty cool.
You see, I just, was researching. I was asking myself, can I into lightning underwater, and apparently you can into lightning underwater, and then war crimes ensue. I blame Zork.
It's definitely Zork's fault.
Yep.
Yeah, you did Shoal work while I was very useless on that front this week. But I did pull out my setting, Hevna. Because without Hevna, Shoal wouldn't exist. Because the process we went through to make Shoal, I learnt how to do when I was formulating Hevna, which I don't know how clearly you guys can see it. I might need to tinker on OBS with my interface if I want you guys to see this. Let's see, can I bring this in a little bit? Let's do that so that you guys can see just a little bit clearer the left side of my Scrivener screen. It is a mess. Corbin says, wait, okay, I woke up roughly 10 minutes ago. I just clocked we're talking Hevna and birthday. Yes, it is my birthday tomorrow. It is Dig's Day tomorrow. And I didn't write any Shoal this week because I'm busy working on the next vehicle series assets. And yeah, so I figured that today we would talk about my personal setting instead and go over that a little bit because everything I learnt doing that we applied to Shoal, and Shoal went a hell of a lot smoother as a result. And yeah, this is what Hevna currently looks like. It is a complete mess. Nothing is in order. Nothing is where it should be. Trying to find stuff is a nightmare. I currently have some of the stuff laid out properly because I started getting in the process of organising everything and putting it the way that it should be. And then I drew a hunchback with truck nuts, and now it's 3 years later, and here we are. For example, I've got, like, you know, my parts for my 7-act story that I'm trying to tell. Except if we go into part 4 and drop this down, we've got chapters 21 through 40, which just so happens to be where the entirety of books 2 and 3 are, that shouldn't be in this file whatsoever. So this is a mess, and I wanted you to see the mess. Because, yeah, getting to where you're going is not always a neat and orderly process like we started out with, for sure. Wait, this is a birthday stream? It is! Yes, it's my birthday tomorrow, so I will be old TM once again. What is the theme of Hevna? Good question. Hevna is a steam fantasy setting, and the special thing in it is the way the magic system works.
Also, Game Fu has made a choice.
Game Fu has made a choice. Well, welcome in. 10 months is... you have been persistent. Well done. You file like me and I live for it. I'm trying not to. I really need to fix this. Chapter 20 times 2 plus 4. Yes.
Are we counting in French now?
Trying not to. I mean, I say steampunk. Well, it's not really steampunk. It's a steam fantasy setting. Because I'm not pulling a horrendous amount of the punk aesthetic, but I did want to pull that sort of industrial era, that era of exploration, etc., for the kind of feel that I want my work to have. Where it's, you know, we don't quite have the same global position that, say, our modern world is in right now. But some areas could go down the punk aesthetic, because I have designed the entire goddamn planet and the political shenanigans going on in a lot of places. But it's not something that will be sort of a worldwide thing. So that the punk doesn't come through nearly as much as the steam does. So that's why I tend to describe it as steam fantasy. Gas lamp fantasy is another way I've heard it described before, though I don't like calling Hevna that, because gas lamp fantasy would indicate that the use of gas technology is particularly important, whereas a lot of that in this setting has been replaced with magic. So it doesn't feel right to me.
Kokobo had requested a water break, a postal check, and a stretch.
Well, my posture is terrible, but I will absolutely stretch and drink something. Thank you very much. I have found it wise to have a floating definition of old. Every year I increment it by 1 year. Coincidentally, this happens on my birthday. Yes, it's pretty much that. Victorian Arcanium, that would also work. Steam Fantasy is just nice and simple, and people tend to get what I mean instantly. But yeah, Hevna is Hevna.
Victor Canum. Victorian. That has a heft to it, doesn't it? I'm not saying it's correct. I'm just saying it has a heft.
Archon Erica says, it's definitely never been gaslight fantasy. Never been called that at all, and you're misremembering it if you thought it was. God damn it, that was clever. I hate you.
Yeah. Arcanum is also a name of a game that kind of defined the idea that you can have guns and rifles and airships and magic ones, and they have an inherent conflict.
I'm going to see if I have in here... Do I have maps loaded into this? It would be entirely possible. I absolutely do not. But we will have a look, because if I do, we will pull on that. Oh, I have some inspiration pieces for Rasal, or at least one of its cities to come. The balloons are incorrect, but yeah, it looks like I do not, in fact, have my map in here. That is a shame. We'll keep that up for now. There we go. We've now got something pretty on stream. Very pretty pieces. Yeah, so I think with... So where to start with this? So when I came up with Hevna, I was in the sort of mood where I wanted to talk about things that were important to me. I had some characters in mind. I sort of began building a setting around it. And I was just generally having a good time with things that appealed to me at the time and still appeal to me now. I did create an entire world for it in a very, very similar way to what we did with Shoal. There is a compendium for Hevna. It is also not finished because things happened. I started Hevna, and then I had a horrendous case of depression, and it got put down for quite a while. And then I went to therapy. Therapy is amazing. And then after that, my sort of BPL adventure has begun, and time is a premium. So there is a lot still to do. Can't have a birthday without balloons. You're right, Wilf. That is why the balloons are here, is because this is a birthday stream. But, you know, I'm hoping in the next, 2 or 3 years to actually finish the compendium and also get my first novel completely finished. Would be nice and out there. But the whole concept of the setting, it's been really interesting because I came up with a system that worked for what I wanted to do. And I have said many times that basically there are 7 stories in all of human history. There are 7 archetypes most stories fit into. You also have the whole thing of every idea has basically been had once already, but it's the unique lens that an idea comes through that makes stories still worth reading and worth writing and etc. We have literally billions of books and stories across all of human history, and none of them are entirely the same as each other, except for the ones that are complete rip-offs, but they don't have any creative integrity and don't count. We all publish a book so we can buy it. I would love to do that, and the buying part, I mean, that's completely negotiable. For me, as a creative person, what matters to me most is having that connection with other people. If I happen to get paid for it, that is a pleasant benefit, but I just have a compulsion to put creative things out into the world and hope that they mean something to someone, so... Can't stop thinking about Helsing's abridged major. I do not have a major with Zeppelins in this series yet, but, you know, that could always change. She can send you a copy of Hungry for the Wolf. This is Australia. I mean, the audiobook for that will happen by the end of this year. That will happen. It is on my list. I have a full voice cast who have all readied up for that. They're just waiting on me to do the scripts. So...
Corbin, yours is made out of lead. Just saying.
I mean, that's fine. Please, by all means, lick it.
It'll be sweet.
Okay, what was I wittering about? So yeah, with Hevna, I had a concept because it worked for the setting and the kind of stories I wanted to tell. And what I didn't know at the time is that Brian Sanderson has done something very similar. Probably immeasurably better, but I have never actually read any of Brian Sanderson's works. I'm very well aware of his work and that it's very highly regarded, and at some point hopefully I'll have time and do the thing. But I've come up with an idea that somebody else has used because good ideas will just occur to people. And it can be very tempting as a creative person when you're like, hey, I've got this great idea for this thing I'm doing. Let me tell you about it. And then you tell somebody who knows something that you've never come across and like, oh, so-and-so already did this. And it can be very tempting to go, oh, well, that's already been done, so I'm not going to bother. And that is the wrong answer, because if you genuinely came up with it yourself and you're not just trying to rip off somebody else's work, there will be a unique element to why you made that decision and how you will use it that will differentiate the thing you're doing from the thing the other person did who also had a similar brilliant idea because it's a brilliant idea. You know? If you say, oh, well, I'm never going to, I've got this great idea for how to make aeroplanes better. Oh, somebody's already made aeroplanes that are better in this way, I guess I won't bother. Well, then you end up with just one company and you don't explore all the ideas, etc. If you have a good idea and you're using it in an interesting way, go forward with it regardless of what other people is doing, is basically what I guess I'm trying to say. Which book? I don't know. You guys might know if I tell you what the core conceit of how Hevna functions is, and you can let me know. But I have been told that it is an idea that has been used by the wonderful Brian Sanderson. So, the way Hevna works. Hevna is a magic setting. It is a fantasy setting, though I wouldn't label it as a high fantasy setting. Magic is not universal, except in some rare cases. We have the Nagu species, who are all magic users, but there is a downside to that. But for humanity, which is the most populous species on the planet, magic is something that only some people have. And those people that do are called weavers. And the reason why I went with that iconography for my magic system is because I wanted to play with the concept of magic that travels in storms. There are 7 great storms that circle the planet. When a storm is in your area, which it will be for a good couple of years before it moves on, these things are big magical weather fronts, effectively. When a storm is in your area, magic is abundant. You can just cast no problem if you are a weaver. And this is, the good times. When storms move on, if there is no longer a storm in your area and a new one hasn't moved in yet, it becomes a time period known as the weft. So I've got the weft and the weave. And in the weft, there is no magic, save anything that you have stored. So magic can be stored. It can be stored in crystals and glass orbs, basically reflective things. And during the weft, countries will use what they have stored up until the next storm comes through. Typically, the weft lasts for a couple of years before another storm will have moved into your area. I have a very complicated spreadsheet because I wrote all of this before AI was a thing. I don't have any programming knowledge to do clever stuff. So I just have a color-coded spreadsheet for every country that lets me know, going back several thousand years and then forward several thousand years from the current day, what storms are in what country at what time. This is not an efficient way to do what I did, but it worked and I can visualize it when I look at it. So that is the system that I have set up. Sounds like Mistborn? It could very well be. Could very well be. Crystal Conquerors are now incredibly frighteningly red. Yes! One of the other things that I did was stored magic. When it is stored, has a sort of, like materia teal, materia green blue. It has that sort of glow. So if something is full of magic, it glows, which can be very, very helpful and also allows you to know, oh, hey, this globe of magic is running out. I will need to replenish it soon or replace it with a different one if I want to keep doing things. Then the other thing that I wanted to do with my magic system was I wanted to have airships, but I don't want the kind that you're seeing on screen now. I didn't want to just have, floating zeppelins, etc. I wanted it to be an active engine system. Airships require magic to fly. This is not something that you can do with steam. This is not something you could just do with gas, unless you're just making something like a Zeppelin from the real world. Obviously, that would work. But that's not what airships are. Airships are... They use etheric engines, because ether is the term that I use for magic in setting. So they are etheric engines, and they will have a number base based on how many globes they use to actuate their engine. Like the ones from Treasure Planet. Treasure Planet was part of the inspiration, yes. Yeah, so I wanted this to have this sort of more mechanical, steam, integrated with magic feel. And I have one particular ship that's a particularly special ship that I had a lot of fun designing, which is the Onivac, which belongs to Zlatko the Dunt, also known as the Dread Pirate Zlatko. And he's a lot of fun, because I also love Princess Bride and feel that certain terms should be allowed to exist outside of a single piece of media. Magic is stored in the balls. Yes, Zork! And if you activate many balls at once, you can fly a ship. So they're more ether ships than airships then. Yes. Obviously they quite often get referred to as airships because they are ships travelling in the air rather than ships travelling on the water. But you are correct. If you wanted to codify them well, they would be ether ships. I would like a skiff called the Hoover. That is completely fair. So this was sort of the stuff I was playing around with my setting when I was coming up with it. But even when I started building the setting, I did something a little different than we did with Shoal. With Shoal, we started the setting first. And it was always about the setting, and we came to our stories after we had a good idea of the setting. When I was making Hevna, I already had an idea of the first couple of stories I wanted to tell. Some of them would be short stories, some of them would be big stories, and the biggest one was the trilogy that I had in mind when I started building the setting, because I really wanted to dig into the theme of what does it mean to have power. So my initial trilogy is called The Meaning of Power. And if you guys would like, I'm very happy to read some of the first book to you today. None of it is fully finished, but the first, I think, like 17 chapters, maybe a little bit less, have had a couple of editing passes pass through them, so might be interesting, and I would love to read some of that to you guys. Or I have a short story that is complete and finished. I don't think I've read it on stream before, but we do have a complete short story that is based at the floating library of Wessenland, the only floating location on the planet. Wolf says, imagine someone rich, powerful, unscrupulous gets ill during the weave, uses magic to regain health. Just how far would they go during the weft as the crystals run dry? So that's where you start having to put in how your magic system is going to work. Is healing magic a thing? Yes. Can it just fix things and does it wear off after magic has gone? No. I treat healing magic on Hevna as an assistive practice. If you lose an arm, you're not just going to have that arm replaced with magic and, just have your arm stuck back on and it's fine. Magic doesn't work that way. It is not that powerful. However, if you have people who are able to use magic to heal, they would be able to help with pain management, slow blood flow to the area so you don't deal with blood loss. They're going to have a background in surgery and mundane treatments, and it effectively becomes that magic is an assistive process. And part of that is because the way I look at magic is if magic just fixes your problems, that changes the nature of what it is to be human, which can be an interesting story, but it's not the kind of stories that I was wanting to tell, and probably not the kind of stories I'm the right person to tell because of just how I look at things. I like the concept of healing magic to be something that allows you, it's assistive to the process of dealing with loss and trauma and pain, because all of those things are part of being alive. There is no human being alive who is more than a couple of days old who hasn't been through some kind of wound or injury or owie or pain of some kind, and that's important to the human experience. Magic in this setting is a temporary bending of the laws of reality. It's more like that, yes, it's more like that. And does that mean people can't cast Fireball? No, you can cast Fireball, but there's stuff that goes into it. Therapeutic and ancillary rather than fixie hand wavy. Yes, it's along those lines. Basically because I just wanted to be able to tell the kind of stories I want to tell and have them mean something. And as I say, it's not to say you can't tell an interesting story based on the other. I just don't think I'm the person to tell it because of how my brain works. Imagine aerial scallops that fly because they have literal pearls of power inside them. Now imagine them evolving and becoming ambush predators. That could entirely be a thing on this setting. One of the species that people have really enjoyed, who are aware of my setting, are the thunder bears of Duntillick. Thunder bears are polar bears who have the ability to use lightning during storm season. And they use that to literally stun the prey that they need to eat to survive the winter. So, yes, that is a thing that can happen. Troa is on a 475 stream streak. Oh, my God. Hello, Tired German. I'm afraid we're not talking Shoal today. I'm wittering about my setting because birthday, and I'm being self-indulgent. So, yes, we do have...
Cool. It's kind of the same, I know, but it's mostly about being cool. It's a cool system. Unlike the unlucky folk here in chat, I already heard a few of these chapters. They're freaking awesome. There's coffee.
There is. So another concept that I built in when I was building the system is, and we did it with Shoal as well, if you're going to have a thematic thing that's like the thing that makes your system special, your setting special, not to say that makes it stand out from everybody else's, but what is this setting's unique thing? Obviously with Shoal we have the psionics and our titans. With Hevna it's the magic and the storm seasons. And with Shoal, when we started looking into that, we were like, how do we make this something that is just embedded in the system and is treated properly and not just this hand-wavy thing that's there because it's convenient to what we want to do? Well, that was when we then started building the different types of coral and how those are used to make a titan. And we thought, the shtick, exactly. And we thought about how psionics work and who has them and who doesn't. And it turned out that we needed, everybody on Shoal basically needs to have it because it's how we're going to keep time, etc. etc, etc. Well, I did the same with magic for Hevna. If Hevna has magic and it has these storms, this should have affected life for the entirety of the planet's existence. So that means that we don't just have people who can use magic. Magic is here as a resource. Nature will learn to exploit it. So obviously we have animals that can use magic as well. And we have some that don't because they just don't need to. They could do perfectly fine without using that resource. Some creatures do use that resource. So, you embed your shtick in and make it native.
Which is cool.
Yeah, I certainly try. And it was Hevna where I sort of learnt to do that thing, and then we used it to make Shoal, and that's been a fun time. So, what I would like to do today is potentially, if you guys want to talk about the setting a bit more, some of the things that are in it, some of the characters, I'd be happy to do so. Or I can read some stuff to you and then get the Meddlesome Magus Squid. If we want to do the Meddlesome Magus Squid, that would involve reading the short story, which we could probably do all of today if we wanted to do that. Because yes, they are magic using fauna. Are there animals that are native to magic like nulls in 40k? Oh, negative to magic. Yes. Sorry, Orcslayers, I misread that. Yes, there are. Yes, there absolutely are. And there is everything that applies to animal species can also apply to humanoid species. So we have humans that can use magic. We have a humanoid series of species, the Nagu tribes or the Nagu cultures, who are all magic users. And then we do also have the Nososaurs, which are negative magic. So yes, that is in there. Please tell me there is a kookaburra that insults you and uses mind magic. I haven't written one yet, but we could. It would fit in there. We could find a way to make that work. Herds of magic wildebeest sweeping majestically across the plains following the storm. We do have both people and animals that migrate based on the magic storms. Yes, that is absolutely a thing. Reminds me how in Avatar: The Last Airbender, there were the natural benders from which each bender types learned the techniques from. Yes. Yeah, and there are magic schools. Magic schools is absolutely a thing. But if you're born a weaver, you are naturally a weaver. Having a teacher means that you'll figure things out a hell of a lot quicker and probably safer and more meaningfully. But if you have the ability to weave, you can weave.
Did you figure out at any point how is the ability materialize? Like white as person A and person B.
Yes, though the
Does
people in the setting don't quite know why it happens, so it's not something that appears in prose, but it is something that I have as the god of the the world that I've made. They don't yet fully understand it in setting though. So
I
one of
assume it's not. I assume it's not pure basic phenotype. It's
nope,
easy to matriculate because most
nope.
people, because these we've figured out in biblical times.
Yeah, no, that's not. So a non-weaver cannot learn to weave. You have to be a weaver to be able to weave at all. If you have a teacher, you will learn to do it better, quicker. If you cannot weave, then you just literally cannot do it. You don't have the ability. So what the thing that I have going on with my weavers is humans so far, or I should say the sapient species, have figured out that all weavers are born during storm time. They are conceived and born during storm time or shortly thereafter, but they must be conceived within a storm being in an area. If there is no magic in an area, any baby that's conceived at that point absolutely will not be a weaver when they are born. That's just a thing. So has this affected how people breed? Yes, it has. There are baby booms during storm time in different countries compared to when there isn't. But, that's something that you can plan for. For the Nagu tribes, who are all weavers, they can only reproduce during storm time. So that's a thing. The same for creatures, animals have similar issues. Those that are very highly dependent on weaving, the breeding populations are only successful during storm time. But there are other things that go into, because, some people who are conceived during storm time will not be born as a weaver. And there is a reason for that, but the people of the planet don't yet know why. Which is probably for the best, because I imagine that would absolutely change reproductive cycles if they did. Not that it's anything they can control. So, ciao, Zork, have a good time. All right, so we're going to have two choices, I think, here. The choices are going to be whether we read the main story of my initial book in my trilogy, which focuses on Princess Anka Kalel, seventh in line to the throne of Rasal, a jungle kingdom, and is going to be a lot to do with intrigue and coups and dealing with the fact that she would like to have power, but she's not really in line to get it before she dies. Or we can read the short story Libramore, which takes us to the floating library of Wessenland and is more light-hearted and does prominently feature the meddlesome magus squid. I don't mind which we do. I will happily do a poll so you guys can choose.
I think we should get a poll. I like polls.
We'll do it
They're
as a
nice.
poll.
They're big. You can put a flag on top of one. Generally, polls are the yardstick of the future in terms of putting planets up in the air. Also, some of them live in Poland, and that is confusing.
All right, poll is up.
Good.
We have 2 minutes, and we'll see what you guys want to do. Yes, there are squid in the short story, the meddlesome magus squid. A problem for the floating library of Wessenland. What I will do is I'll click over to I'm actually looking. Do I have Libramore loaded into this, or will I have to find it elsewhere? I think I will have to find it elsewhere, which will be fine. Let me see. Open. Where will it be? Because ideally I want to open the original. Yes, update project. Thank you. There we go. So yes, I do have it on here if we are going to do it this way. That works. Alrighty, let's catch up on...
What are we catching up on?
Ooh, I am making sure there have been no updates in the Legion, because sometimes there'll be an update from BB letting me know if she's streaming or not today. I'm hoping she'll be with us today, but there's no notes at the moment.
Oakslayer's Lictor's Feather type of artillery ammo, the one that causes the least sort of collateral damage. I'm a huge fan of incredibly accurate targeting.
So it looks like we are going to definitively be doing the short story, which is completely fine. And then you guys will understand the mega squid. So what I will say about the short story, it was written for fun as I was exploring the setting. And while it is accurate, it's probably not as well written as my first book because I started writing that after I'd learnt some lessons. So it's, of the two, it's not going to be quite so good in terms of the writing, but I think it's still enjoyable. So we will read it and we'll see what you think. Tide German has a message for both of you. Have any of you played some of the Myst adventure games? If so, what is your opinion on the concept of writing, making true worlds as writers? I grew up playing Myst. When I was very, very young, the first game I ever played was Lemmings that my uncle put in front of me. And then some years later, when I was actually, you know, old enough to conceive of games, we moved into Age of Empires. And then one day he sat me down while he was looking after me for my mum. And he said, "This is Myst. Have fun." I went, "Well, Uncle, what's it about? What do I do? What is this?" He said, "This is Myst. Have fun. You have to work it out." And I absolutely loved it. It's very dated now to try and go back and play, but the concepts it brought in, the atmosphere, and then the way that you get introduced to the characters later on, I really enjoyed it. And the concept of being able to write a book that becomes a world that people are actually living in somewhere out there it's very, very cool. He was a good uncle, yes. He has his moments. We're sadly, in my later years, not on speaking terms any longer. But when I was very young, he was a great uncle and introduced me to many cool things, which also included Toe Jam and Earl. So I'm really dating myself today on my birthday.
Somewhat confused-related.
Oh, have you never played Myst or seen it?
No, I know of Myst.
Ah, fair.
Yeah, Toe Jam.
Toe Jam and Earl was a completely unrelated game that was very, very silly and very, very fun on the Sega Genesis. Hausercar says, "I kept trying to get a handle on the game when I got it as a birthday present, but I just missed it." House!
Hals. Did we tell them that Hals has been dragged into the Klappenheim?
We have dragged Hausercar into the 40k game, yes. So we will also have tales of what Hals has been getting up to soon as well. Just like Parallax with Mordecai and the table of trinkets he keeps finding in his quarters.
Level of the amount of stuff. I'm glad it happened now, and I had Zeiko help me come up with the navigators. So
yes. Fabulous, excellent.
You can blame Constanza on Zeiko. Right, we were about to read your story.
We were, and then we got distracted by Myst. So I'm going to try to do a thing, and it should all work. There might be a very brief blip where you guys will get to see what I'm working on, but we'll see what happens. Will this flick over? Yes, it will, and you definitely didn't see that brief screen in between, ladies and gentlemen. We're also going to take that out because my real name does not need to be on here. Alrighty, let me zoom this in a little bit so it's a little bit more cozy reading. We'll go to 150, I think. Yeah, that's nice. Helps if I don't just then click on the trash can. There we are. Okay, has Hal confirmed? No, that's not Hal's. That would be Parallax, and no, he hasn't yet because he hasn't figured this out as yet. The blip verts are dangerous. I mean, they are. They are. It's fine. Alrighty. I'm going to have a sip of my drink, and then we will start reading. And just like that, Troa redeems a water break. What perfect timing, sir. And a stretch. Troa, I need to know who was the last Haunts you did a run for. What Haunts have you been running? I'm currently running Mambo. Uma Musume. Troa also plays. Right, let us read this thing. Libramore. These days, they called him Libramore Verind, but a mere age of 25 years, and faced with the 3 people in front of him, Verind dearly wished he could go back to just being the boy. He wasn't mentally ready to train apprentices, even if he knew perfectly well he was more than capable, physically. Sir Ederic permits that up to 2 may pass, or all may fail, Libramore, droned the man responsible for bringing him the 3 youths. Then he leaves the choice and manner of training in your hands. I would remind you, though, that 'tis a strange job we do here, and applicants are few to come by. The workload is quite significant. Verind kept his face straight with practised ease. The groundsmaster, one Malik Darmin, spoke in his usual nasal tone, showing no concern as to what he said in front of whom. Stooped and greying at the temples, Malik wore the robes of the floating library with a shabby and ill-fitting air, a byproduct of the fact that his work rarely allowed him the environment to wear anything as loose or inconvenient as official dress. Despite the rich cloth of burgundy, trimmed in the green of the outdoor staff, there was, as ever, something entirely earthy about Malik, from the peaty scent that always seemed to follow him around the grounds to the ever-present stray leaf in his thin and stringy hair. He is one of the longest-serving members of the non-scribe staff. Give him the respect he thinks he's owed. Verind carefully kept his thoughts from showing on his face. Humour him, and he will go away satisfied. Antagonise him, and you'll be here all afternoon and eating nothing but the most shrivelled carrots for a week. Be polite, even if he did just tell these children they're not all welcome. Thank you for bringing them to me, Sir Darmin, he said smoothly. Your counsel is, of course, wise, and I will do my best to ensure our prospects are skilled enough to fill the vacancies. He watched the gardener puff up at his choice in wording and fought not to grin. Perhaps you would be so good as to show them to the apprentice quarters while I prepare my materials for the first lesson this very evening? He watched the groundsman begin to smile, and then the expression froze halfway across his face, leaving him with a faintly perplexed look. Smiling serenely, Verind held the door open as he watched Malik search for some soft way to refuse to trek all the way back across the open ground to the docking building with the 3 charges, especially as winter meant the library was enjoying a customary light dusting of sleet-riddled snow. When no immediate way to do so presented itself without rejecting the politeness sent back his way, Malik grudgingly stepped back out into the biting cold and beckoned to the 3 confused-looking youths. I will see to it, Libramore. When will you require their attendance? 8 of the evening bells, in the vestibule aqua. Please ensure they are duly instructed on how to get there. Thank you, said Armin. As the group left his office, Verind softly closed the door, added another small log to the wood burner in the corner to banish the cold they'd brought in with them, and then began to count under his breath, while he stood by the window looking out over the long, arcing path back upslope to the docking building. From here, he could see the 3 airships currently visiting, all of them hanging in the grey and shrouded air like giant pale fish. 2 bore the carrack shape of combination air and sea vessels, and the 3rd had the distinctive balloon of a cargo dirigible. But for all they had brought food, supplies and trainees all the way up to the library, they were of far less interest to him than the voices of the newcomers just as he reached a count of 10 under his breath. But, sir, we only just walked down all this way, complained the taller of the boys as they moved into his line of view, snow briefly dusting their attire before melting away to leave them still damper than when they had come into his room. Put aside your whining and be glad for the opportunity to even tread these paths, child, Malik snapped back, moving with surprising agility for his bad posture as he climbed the slope. Do you have any idea how few people will even set foot on this sacred ground? Do you? All the world's knowledge is kept here. The great and the good travel months just to enjoy a day's appointment with a single librarius, scribe or scholar, and for the want of a few meagre years of your life and some hard work, you will live here, amid the words of the greatest men time has ever known. Chuckling, Verind stepped away from the window. The speech, or rant if one was honest about it, was one he had heard many times when he'd been younger, and the drudgery of his apprenticeship had seemed far too much to bear. It was a litany of words poured forth by the aged gardener any time a junior complained about the difficulties of living at the library, and, as familiar and well-worn to near every member of staff as a favoured coat. Filling the swinging cauldron over his little fire with water, Verind returned himself to the comfort of his armchair and picked up the book he'd been reading prior to Malik's arrival at his door, and flicked back through it to the page he'd left off on. While his work required him to steadfastly perform rigorous checks in the library stacks, protecting and guarding some of the most high-minded and influential works in the entire world from harm, nothing was more relaxing during his time off than burying his nose in the latest tenpenny mystery story by Grissa Hergen and whiling away an hour with the tawdry and shallow text whose only goal was a bit of fun. It wasn't like there was much work he would need to do before the evening meal to be ready to test these 3 new apprentices anyway. After the water came to the boil, and he rose to make himself a steaming mug of sayer to drink, he set 3 dark Tlucky sweets on his table and made a mental promise to only eat 1 for each apprentice that he would be immediately sending home. After all, 3 sweets in one night wouldn't make him fat. That is my opening. How are we doing? You've been running Gold Ship and Rice Shower. Excellent. Ty Gemma says, I did like in later missed games that there's the idea of unstable worlds fraying at the edges. Yes, the series was very good. What were you going to say, Lictor?
I like the rant. I agree with him.
Yep, the Library of Wessenland is literally the repository of the most important works on Hevna. So he's not exaggerating. He is definitely still ranting, however.
Ranting is important. Whoever tells you otherwise, trying to sell you something.
We will carry on. The last official meal of the day generally signalled the start of Verind's working hours. After his calm afternoon with his book, the feast that made up dinner offered a sumptuous start to his activities and also indicated a supply ship had indeed docked today. The cooks had outdone themselves, as usual on delivery day, so his plate ended up as a mess of small servings of his favourite dishes, from the light and piquant lemon-dipped forest scallops to a much richer palette of shallow-fried port venison medallions. Hidden behind a platter of diced fruits, he discovered a dish of bittersweet shrimp alongside a tray of herb-stuffed bread, and for dessert, he almost ascended to the lights when he found a large tureen of mandarin sorbet, with a fresh raspberry coulis. At the other end of the hall, he could see the nervous faces of the new apprentices. With some degree of satisfaction, he watched them huddle together at the end of the lowest table, the boys sitting either side of the one girl with them. Maybe they'll do a little better than I expected. At least they aren't isolating each other yet, he thought as he savoured another spoonful of sorbet and observed them talking and poking at their plates. The kids were not eating anything nearly so pleasant as his own repast, though their fare was much better suited to what would be expected of them, assuming they weren't back on a boat out of the library the very next day. From his vantage point among the other Libramores, he couldn't really make out what exactly they had been served, but his guess was some form of thick stew and brown bread, or perhaps a curried dish with potatoes. Anything heavy, warming, and full of energy for menial chores. That was how it had been for him, and how it would be for the generations that would eventually follow even after he had passed on. If they're smart kids, they'll eat whatever it is, even if they don't like it. If not, they'll learn soon enough. He smiled to himself, then turned his attention to the other people sitting at the higher tables. The tables for the Libramores weren't the best in the Grand Hall. Those went instead to the librarius, scholars and scribes, no matter rank. Auxiliary staff like himself, irrespective of accomplishments or merits, would never carry quite the same status as the actual intellectuals, but he'd never really been bothered by the distinction. The library subsisted only because of its prestige and guaranteed excellence of its scholars, so it was no wonder they had their own tables at which the visiting dignitaries accessing the library would also sit. It was all part of the mystique and grandeur of the library, and he was more than glad to be out of it, not least of which because the idea of eating with golden-tinted cutlery just irked him. His distaste doubled when he caught sight of today's guests, 2 of whom he was all too familiar with. Sir Barlin and Serena Keebard Dunn were fairly regular visitors to the library. Both born to the old rich elite of Westernland's aristocracy, they had spent significant amounts of their wealth on library visit bookings in the days leading up to the Civil War. While their contemporaries had been busy facing down the rioting mobs of peasants over the distribution of capital, the Duns had simply moved their money into the library and pretended to have none to their name. They'd been among the first of the nobility to turn against the old king and to support the Council of West once it was formed. Aggravatingly, they had only gained in status and wealth after the war was over, their close links to the library integrating them with the still young council in a manner entirely at odds with the original intent of their deceptions. To make matters worse still, Serena Dunn was the kind of lady who possessed a shrill voice, a range of opinions, and a need to bring both together any time there was a spare pair of ears to listen. Right now, she was talking to a very tense-looking noble from Rassal. It seemed she was busy trying to justify her position regarding the Nagan races and their rights. Or more, her belief they deserved no rights at all. How can you spend so much time in these walls and not absorb a shred of wit or intelligence, woman? He thought to himself. You'll be lucky to walk out of here without a black eye if you keep talking like that to a member of Empress Anka's court. Naga are a key part of the empire. Sourly, he finished the last of his dessert, then noticed one of the more relaxed scholars grinning at him. Memory eventually provided the name Libraris Jim Tomvas, the history specialist, and Verind gave him a knowing smile and roll of his eyes, which the professor echoed. Buoyed up by the silent exchange, Verind rose and bowed formally to Ser Ederic, the most senior of the Libramores, and excused himself to make his way to the West Wing for his nightly rounds. Just because there were apprentices to deal with didn't take away from his normal workload, especially as the natural sciences on the ground floor of the wing was an area always at greater risk of damage than anywhere else in the library. At least he had the sure knowledge that even if there was much to do before 8 of the bells, it would be better than listening to Serena Dunn for the next hour. How are we doing, chat? 47 of you here, thank you.
47 of us listening in rapt attention. So Anka is an empress now.
Yes, spoilers for how her story goes. Her coup is eventually successful. Not necessarily in ways that even she expected when she started out on it. But yes.
Those stout walls, you never know how they end or why.
Is kind of how those go, isn't it?
It is. Would you like to tell everybody in chat who Libraris Jim Tomvas is? If you remember.
That would be my dad.
That is your dad. One of the joys of being a writer and writing cool things is you get to put people that you want to put into your stories. Whether it's spite fiction and you put in the names of people you don't like as the bad guys, or the mooks that get killed off, or people that you respect mightily in positions of influence and importance because they made your life better. I do have 2 of Aiden's family members currently referenced in my work. Oxai says, cool way for naming the puppers. Yeah, Ceres and Pip were obviously named for Helsing, but when Anka came along and we knew we were keeping her, one of the options was that we would name her after the main character of my first book, and we decided to do that.
It's a fun fact that when we were first deciding on Ceres's name, it was gonna be either Ceres or Anka.
I'm glad we went with Ceres, because she is very much a Ceres.
Oh, agreed. Fully agreed. But for a little bit, that was the alternative option, which is part of why we went with the name for her daughter.
Yeah.
And it goes, that's all good. I have done the same. When I was running Pathfinder 1E for a while with a full homebrew setting, a lot of landmarks and a lot of NPCs were named for people that I knew nobody at the table would ever meet because they were like classmates from grade school or classmates from boot. And yeah, Ain't nobody going
You-
to go and meet the guy who's on a postage stamp in the middle of the ocean that I went to boot with for like 3 months, and that's it.
Yeah.
So who did you name Scrotus after?
That was before I was DMing. That was its own thing.
I was
And
ribbing
I
at you, and you know it.
true, but Scrotus did come from a reference. Korgoth of Barbaria was a pilot episode for a new Adult Swim cartoon by Gendy Tartakovsky, the same guy who did like Dexter's Lab and Samurai Jack. And as
yeah.
one of the throwaway gags, a bad guy named Scrotus threatens the main character, Korgoth, before, getting promptly, like, destroyed. And it was
Is it-
just this one throwaway line, but I'm like, that's fucking hilarious, and I like it.
Excellent. Now the rest of chat are aware that Scrotus exists, and now we can go to Mr. And now we can go elbow deep into that piece of lore.
Oh, you
After
can
the
still
story.
find the archived TG thread from way back when. Oh, it's like fucking 20 years ago, almost, like 17, 18 years ago, where
imagine.
we shared our game that we ran on TG and just got a lot of people to do what's basically Asterix the Gull names, except,
Except
like
Look.
dick jokes.
scrotusized.
Yeah, dick
You,
jokes.
you hear how worried I am about any of what you just say. I'm absolutely terrified and will not ever prompt anyone to do anything about it. This is, however, a slight bit of gaslighting by me, because I would absolutely push people to do stuff like that all the time.
I'm just delighted that you enjoy Captain Fistus the Elbow Deep as much as you do.
Listen, glory. What a wonderful way to die.
Indeed.
Speaking of, the Night Owl says, Dan Abnett used to use the names of the people in the licensing office of the companies that commissioned him until he discovered several of them arguing vociferously over who had the coolest death in his book. Then he began carrying a spiral-bound notebook with him at all times, and he invited people to enter their names and preferred manners of death in. Yes! You know what? I might have to do that at the meetup this year.
Yeah, actually.
That could be quite fun. I might have to do that at the meetup this year to use in some future writing project.
Can I get one in early because I don't get to go?
Of course.
Excellent. I will type something down for you.
Yours will probably be the example of, this is what we're trying to do. Here's an example of what it looks like.
Yes. Sounds good.
All right, should we read a bit more of this?
I would like to.
Okay.
I would like that.
And we will carry on. By night, the library was a strange place. Unlike the daytime, when the gas lamps lining the hallways kept the shadows fully at bay, the night was given over to only every third lamp left lit, and even then as dim as could be managed. The library itself was as tall as the Grand Cathedral of the Seven Lights in Arletine, but unlike its religious counterpart, which was never entirely quiet or empty, the library had an eerie silence to it after hours. It was almost as if something, some great and tenebrous thing, was waiting and watching in the shadows. Not maliciously, but watching nonetheless. The faint background noises of the great ether engines in the rock beneath Verin's feet, and the ponderous clicking of cogs in the clock far above his head, only added to the sensation and sent tingles down his spine when the clouds outside parted to suddenly bathe him in moonlight. Suppressing the familiar feelings, Verin shuffled quietly down the central hall in his soft slippers, until he reached the grand wood doors and pulled them open on oiled hinges. With a soft sigh, the ancient dark wood passed under his hand until he could step into the corridor beyond. Stack upon stack stretched away from him to his left and right, interspersed periodically with gaps leading to study tables, workspaces, or even alcoved rooms in the outer walls, though he had no way to see any of it as the door closed behind him and shut out all light save that from the moon outside the windows at the end of the long wing. By day, the wing was lit on both the ground and upper floors by ether lamps. As expensive as it could be to run ether lighting with the use of magus globes, especially in the Weft when the resource was incredibly scarce, there was never any question about running gas lighting into the wings themselves. The vapours and smuts such lamps gave off were absolutely unacceptable to have around the precious books of the library. Thus, the only answer was the pure and clean light of magus globes. It was just such an orb he carried in his personal lamp, which he now unhooded in order to find his way to the centre of the extremely long room as quickly as possible. Blue-green light spilled out over the floor as he clipped the hooding mechanism up out of the way and trotted down the room. He passed long display cases of parchments, including the Helsetian treatise on river animals from a time before Helsey was bordered by desert, and a physical specimen of a mummified laughing owl from the Lely Islands, now sadly extinct. Other similar exhibits passed by in a blur until he finally reached the grand seal set into the floor. Depicting an anatomically correct skull of the Wessenland giant rat, its teeth pointed south and the centre of its brow marked the exact middle of the wing, so it was here that Verind finally came to a stop and set down his lamp. Underlit by the rising glow, he opened the front of his robe to pull out a collapsible rod, which he extended and held in his left hand before he closed his eyes. It wouldn't do to crash into anything once he started working, after all, and it was always easier to identify where he was needed with his eyes closed. Double-checking the lamplight was still in the blue spectrum, he grunted to himself, closed his eyes, and began to weave. Around 25% of the human population born during any ether storm year had the gift. Scholars from this very wing were currently theorising this was due to some fluctuation in how a baby was formed when ether was present, but for now no one knew for sure and nothing had been proved. Whatever the case, Verind felt blessed to be among the few and to have access to the realm of potential. Forming the middle finger of his right hand into a circle with his thumb, he drew a straight line across his chest and reached out with his sixth sense. During a storm year, the ether would have been everywhere, flowing around him like silvery snakes of power, just waiting to exist. The spin, as it was called, became entirely that as weavers spun their hands through complex motions to turn potential into real-world energy and effects. After a storm moved on, though, and the weft set in, only stored ether could be used to replicate similar feats, and only for so long as the stored charge lasted. Any crystal or reflective orb could contain the intangible substance. And so it was Verind had to reach out for the power stored in his lamp to use his abilities. Ether seems so strange when it's tightly mashed together like this. I swear it only glows with light out of frustration at not being able to flow. Musing internally, oh my goodness, the boy is being adorable. You should share that in the orcs.
I intend to.
Musing internally, he used the circle of his fingers as a guide for the power as he pulled it out of the orb and into its natural strands, fashioning each mote of potential available into a series of snakes floating around him. Then he cast them out into the stacks. Weaving came in many flavours, but Verind had only ever known the divination sphere himself. Others could weave great firestorms or flash floods, but for every kinetic specialist making the headlines, there were weavers of other schools working just as hard in the background. 13 years of training gave Verind a tight and personal pride in his craft, one so specialised even within his own sphere, he was confident no one could sense quite like he could, or at such range. With a flick of his fingers, he extended his senses through his coursing snakes as they perused the entire wing at speed, poking their invisible snouts into and over everything stored on the ground floor. Books had a uniquely enjoyable smell, and nearly everyone in the world could agree on that and identify it, but Verind could sense that smell in a way the average person never would. It came to him in tones and colours, in tastes and sounds, and some were repellent, while others were doubly enjoyable to him. His job right now, though, was to find the bad smells and remove the item in question from the shelves for treatment. Book scent, after all, came from naturally occurring moulds that thrived on parchment, papyrus, and most of the other materials that were anything softer than actual stone. It gave books their delightful odour, the pages a thick feel, and, as the mould slowly progressed into the page, it could also give readers a slight high or buzz if they inhaled it sharply. After that, though, the mould began to devour the page, consuming the tiniest particles day after day until the thick page became brittle and worn, and holes began to show where the parchment was now thinnest. It may take a decade, a century, maybe even longer depending on the material used and the inks and processes involved, but every single precious work on the shelves was subject to the galls and acids of mould. Left untreated, the eldest works of the library would have been so much dust long before he was even born. A sharp tang to the left pulled at his mind. The Natural Sciences wing contained rare samples as well as books, even boasting its own research stations. It was these factors that made the area more susceptible to the spread of mould from one work to another than anywhere else in the building. Rare was it for Verint to get through a whole week without finding a work in need of care, and tonight was no different. Keeping his eyes closed, the Libramore followed the tail of the alerting ether serpent to its head, tapping the floor and sweeping his cane gently to avoid walking into anything until he was stood before the offending shelf. To his inner eye, the rows of books and scrolls were a pleasant background hue of muted purple. But to the left of the shelf, one work in particular seemed to glow with a distasteful and clashing orange, the scent of it as repellent as the colour when he reached out to pick it up, sniffing it with his actual nose to confirm his diagnosis. Just under the warm and pleasant must of its pages, there was indeed the acrid twist of mould at work, acidic and dangerous. To anyone else, it would have been undetectable, and maybe gone unnoticed for another decade. More, if no one had cause to access the book for study. But it was a piercing alarm to senses as honed as his. He waited a few more minutes with the problem book in his hand, making sure his weave had due time to find any other issues in the wing, then he slowly opened his eyes and released the power from his grasp. For a brief second, the mentally perceived snakes, invisible as they had been during their work, flashed with a brief glow as the last of their ether burned off. And then he was stood in the dark once more. With the aid of his cane, he made his way back to the seal to collect his now dark lamp, then walked to the door into the rest of the library, guided by the dim glimmers of moonlight. Only once he stepped back into the hall and stopped under a gas lamp did he get to find out which book he had pulled from the shelves. Reaching up to twist the knob on the lamp to get more light, he turned the volume over in his hands. Vander's A to Z of Home Gardening and the Importance of Bees, he read with a slight smile. Not a work likely to be missed for a few weeks. This'll do. Tucking the book into a pocket of his robe made for such, followed by his cane and lamp as he returned them to their stowage, he turned the gas back down and made his way towards the service stairs into the bowels of the library's bedrock. He was a fashionable quarter of an hour late for his meeting with the apprentices, as intended. Smiling grimly to himself, he skulked down the steps and kept his ears open. How are we doing? Lady Red's very own death note. Yes, I will have a death note of fun things. Night Owl says, I still have to go and check his books from the last 20 years to see if he finally got around to killing me. Oh, if you do have a look and you ever find out, Night Owl, you must tell me. Oh, we have a follow from Sky Guy 410. Welcome in. Ed says, this is really cool. I love utility magic. Yeah, I like to build whatever my thing is, whatever the shtick is, I do like to build things into the bones of a setting and think about how that would be properly actuated. Now I need a robe with a book pocket. Everybody should have a robe with a book pocket.
Look, it has pockets.
All right, are we ready to meet the children? For those of you who were here yesterday when we briefly got to the terrible children in Lost Odyssey, I think my children are less annoying, so hopefully you guys will like them.
That is not a high bar to vault. Just gonna say.
Yeah, but the kids in this aren't as cute as Simon from Shoal.
This is true.
Well, that is a high bar to press. So yes, they are less angsty than Raistlin.
Orcslayer says,
I have to say,
go
on. Sorry.
No, you go.
The utility magic thing also is a really nice aspect for making a world feel like it's actually a living, breathing world.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, one of the first things any kind of new capability or any kind of, cornerstone technology or skill is going to get turned to is just making the day-to-day bullshit easier.
Yep.
So if we had magic in meat space, I guarantee you it would go very much the way of, esoteric software where it's like, oh yeah, I made this plugin for your browser that makes shit a lot easier for you to freaking deal with all your bullshit, or to makes the ads go away, stuff like that. Magic would be something similar. It's like, yeah, no, we found a way for you to find your house keys no matter where you fucking put them, so that way, whenever they disappear, you can just kind of do this little doodad dance,
Yeah.
and suddenly, oh yeah, here's your house keys.
Phenomenal cosmic power. Also basic menial labor.
Yep. Never lose your glasses again.
Look, if I need to choose, if I get supreme magical power, object number 1, healing magic. Object number 2, convenience. All the things that require physical manipulation to minute a level of control that are so labor intensive because you have to move that needle just that way over there.
Indeed.
Orcslayer
Magic.
says, my pants pockets are almost big enough for a book to fit in. Orcslayers, I would like to take you back by a good decade or so, because I've dated myself today with the nonsense going on. I had trip pants back in the day, and the wonderful thing about trip pants was you could put like 3 books in those things, and it was fine. I'm very strongly debating the need to purchase trip pants once more. Introspective says, first the rotary cannon, then the washing machine. I mean, whichever way a setting ends up doing it, the problem comes in is if you get to the rotary cannon and then the washing machine never happens. At that point, you haven't thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, first the scout plane and then the commercial airliner.
Yeah.
Like, we came up with ways to throw aircraft into World War One, and then from there we figured out how to make commercial flight to connect the world.
We've learned how to throw massive fireballs from this stored magic, but for some reason nobody's decided to make, a safe indoor cooking stove. It just wouldn't happen. You're going to get the cooking stove as well.
Yeah.
So yes, rotary cannon, then the washing machine, but you can't forget the washing machine. All right, should we read a bit more and meet these children?
Ed Gauss, exactly, dude. And that's the thing. It's, you gotta take into consideration all of the mundane to make a world feel lived in, because 99% of even, the hero's life is gonna be day-to-day mundane. They still have to go find a place to shit in the woods. They still have to cook dinner. They still have to, frickin' trim their toenails and shave their beard and all of this crap.
All right.
About half of what I've written already about the setting, my cultivation stories, literally about food, how it is prepared, and why it is so important.
Ceres, you are stinky. That is all.
Incredible cosmic powers, stealing souls, an economy based on gravity, but eventually it boils down to, so, what's for dinner?
Yes.
Yeah. And why?
Very important. All right, let's go meet some children, because it is 1:30, so let us continue. I just don't think it's fair, that's all. And he's late. Verind paused as he reached the last turn in the stairs, leaning against the cool, smooth stone to listen in. The vestibule aqua was lit with softly rippling purple-blue light that filtered up through the water channels from the ether engines below, so he could see the shadows of the 3 youths dancing against the far wall without them knowing he was there. Slipping down the wall to sit, he smiled at the complaint from the girl and eagerly listened for what response the boys would give. "It's because it isn't, Dina, but that's life," said the taller of the two, skimming a stone into the nearest water channel. "Why do you think it'd be any different here? If there are only 2 positions, then there are only 2 positions. Wishing and complaining won't change it, and adults get to set the schedules, but not necessarily keep to them. At least we're here on time. You're right about that, kiddo. Nothing changes unless you make it, and you can only control yourself, Verin smiled to himself. He could see the shadows of the other 2 children, one choosing to sit down with a huff, while the girl, Dina, crossed her arms and began to pace. It was she that broke the glum silence they fell into about a minute later, kicking another stone into the water. "Do you know anything about the Libramore, Charles?" she asked, with faux levity. "You mean the group, or the one we're assigned to?" answered the shorter of the 2 boys. "Both." "Well, Libramore is just the term they give to all certified staff in the library that don't come under the librarian staff. You know, the scholars and scribes," said the youth identified as Charles. Verind raised an eyebrow in surprise at the response, not really expecting any of the children to know much about the library and its internal structure. He certainly hadn't the day he had arrived. "Everyone else either has a title for their job or just Libramore," Charles continued. "The only exception is the Libra Magus, of course. He's the head Libramore and thus given honorary scribe status, but they don't have one right now. I heard the old Libra Magus, Sendik, passed away this spring. There won't be a vote for who takes his place for another month or so." "So, if we get in and learn everything, we'll be Libramores one day too," stated the taller boy slowly. "Let's see. The file Malik dropped off said you were all from the same poorhouse, but I'd put good money down that Charles had some education before he ended up here. But you other 2 haven't," Verind mused to himself. "Interesting." "That's right, like Sir Verind, our tutor," Charles was saying, before giving an expressive shrug that made his shadow dance across the wall. "I don't really know anything about him. The library doesn't really send out pamphlets about its staff, after all." "Do you think he'll be nice?" Dina asked, anxiety in her voice. "Not sure. He didn't seem very happy to see us when we first arrived," Charles said, and Verind made a mental note to keep an eye on the child. He was perceptive for his age. "I guess it doesn't really matter, though. He doesn't have to like us, and we don't have to like him. We all just have to do what we've been told to do. He said he wanted to make sure 2 of us passed, but I'm not sure he really meant it." "Why is this job so complicated?" demanded the bigger boy sourly. "I mean, they don't talk about becoming an apprentice for the gardens anywhere near as much." "Well, you don't have to be able to weave to garden, for one thing. But haven't you noticed something we have in common?" This time it was the girl showing a degree of insight, and Verind was glad they couldn't see him, or his grin as they talked. "We all came from St. Jenna's poorhouse?" suggested the big boy. "No, not that," Dina said with a degree of exasperation. "I mean about us ourselves. Our weaving." "Well, we all can weave, though you and Bastion are much better than me, Dina," Charles chipped in. "But that's just it, isn't it? They asked us which of us would maybe want to work here, and about 8 weavers all said yes. Even Bastion and I aren't the strongest out of that group. It should have been Tristan or Hilda if that was the case. And it wasn't that they wanted the best educated, because they didn't choose Matilda. You know what I think they were looking for?" "What?" the big boy Bastion asked. "Distance and sight," Dina said firmly. "Everyone else was always being used to weave the dropped cloth under the loom so no one had to crawl in. But they never made any of us do that, even though we could too. We just watched the machines and pointed out when they were going wrong. I don't think the other kids knew how to do that. Only us 3 was any good at actually seeing the ether, and we got long reach and could do the whole room at once. But I don't get why that's needed for joining the Protector Libramores." "How can weaving help protect books?" Bastion said, shaking his head. And Verind decided it was time to step in. Standing up and slapping his feet on the stairs, he heard them scramble to their feet and whisper a quick warning to each other as he took his time coming around the corner as if he had only just arrived. When he did, all 3 were lined up and gave him a shallow bow with swept left arms, typical of common Westernland decorum. "Good evening, Sir Verind," they chorused as one. No, he sighed. "You aren't in Westernland now, and that sort of thing just won't do." "Not in—" Bastion started, then swiftly shut up as Verind shot a sharp glare at him. "The floating library is of Westernland, boy, but it is not Westernland. We have no political allegiance or agenda. We are simply the home of knowledge and the protectors of discovery. We are a neutral place where warring leaders have even sought middle ground to sign some of the most important peace treaties in history. So it hardly does to adopt one country's customs over any other, he said, crossing his arms as he inspected them. Each was dressed in brown robes, with soft leather shoes technically of better quality than his slippers, but the sashes they wore at their waists were misaligned or upside down. Their badges were shoddily placed, and the state of their hands was reprehensible. Just like himself when he had been their age, and just as unacceptable. Yes, sir, the boy mumbled, glancing in confusion at the other two, both of whom just shrugged and tried to avoid his glare. Still, it'll do for now, he said, relenting. I don't expect any of you to be here beyond the morning, so we may as well press on, though I will say this. Sir and Serena are terms for laymen or your juniors. Your seniors are always Libramor or Libraris, Libra Magis or Libra Scholaris. The trio passed another set of significant looks among each other, and Verind became truly aware that the three must have known each other for most of their lives, and had their own personal language of body motions and signals he would have to be sharply on the lookout for. Yes, Libramor Verind, but excuse me for asking, why won't we be here past morning? Ventured Dina, braver than the two boys. Because, girl, I sincerely doubt you will make it past the first test of your abilities. Even he could hear the capital G on girl as he spoke. When he had been young, and Libra Magus Seredic had been training him, he had always been able to hear the difference between boy and boy in the old man's tone, and now it seemed that somewhere along the line he had picked the trick up too. He saw Dina open her mouth to say something, and then think better of it. He smiled grimly and stalked past them towards a series of low benches in the corner of the room. I'm guessing you and the boy are about 14, and the kid is about 11, maybe 12. And yet you're so grown up for your ages, comparatively. Lights be with you, because if you can handle this place, things will get better. For you, they can only get better. As you can see, the vestibule aqua is the inlet point for all water used by the library. The ether engines, which keep us aloft, also draw cloud matter through 4 condensers on each cardinal point of the island, and the moisture then drains through a sediment strainer into these channels before dropping into the reservoir below us through one final meshed grill. Recently, it has been the job of the junior technicians and maintenance engineers to keep these channels clear. However, now that you are all here and trying to attain the rank of Libramor, it should again fall under our jurisdiction. Keeping the channels clear will be your job from now on, if you make it past today. That's fine, Sir Libramor Verin, but why? I don't understand what this has to do with protecting the books. An excellent question, and one which will occupy us until midnight, I expect. Come, there are notebooks under the benches. I suggest you use them. You have a great deal to learn. Now, you must all be able to sense ether particularly well, or they wouldn't have sent you to me. But what do you know about the 6 spheres of attunement? He hadn't been joking, at least about how much they would have to study. Verind didn't hold back as he simply front-loaded the children with information about the library, forestalling their questions about what any of it had to do with being a Libramor of book preservation, until they could at least parrot back to him some of the very basics about how the library functioned. The kid, Charles, knew the most. Frequently, Verind found himself surprised at the base-level knowledge the child had about the various wings of the library and their locations, the nature of the contents therein, the types of people who made up the permanent residents of the islands, and even some of the protocols for accessing and reading the books. He did not, though, know anything about how the library functioned mechanically, which was as it should be. Here, Verind took the most time, detailing the location and use of the ether engines that kept the island miles above the land and water below, and provided the shield over the top of them to keep the air from becoming too thin or plants from freezing. Why, though? Why not have the library on the ground? Girl asked, crinkling her brow. Lit by the blue rippling light coming through the water channels, Verind realised she had all the markings of a fairly pretty girl, once she got a little more meat on her. The kind of pretty that will one day blossom into beauty enough to distract the most dedicated scribe or scholar. And if she is noticed by some visiting dignitary, will she bother to stay here? or instead seek the lap of luxury on some nobleman's arm. That would be a waste of my time and hers. He shook himself free of the speculative thoughts, focusing on the here and now instead of an uncertain future. It used to be, he answered. Truthfully, the original reason it became the floating library, instead of just the Wesson repository, was not because of some grand plan, but simply because we could. A large amount of the new discoveries made are tested here every year, and engineering is just a form of applied science. Once it became known that such a thing may be possible, it was only a matter of time until it was tried, so why not here? The result has been that our purpose has become more focused, since it is far easier to protect the books from unscrupulous hands and make ourselves accessible to the select few when we are so hard to reach. Isn't that a bit silly? Why don't you want everyone to read the books? Bastian asked impulsively, kicking his feet so that his slippers made scuffing noises on the stone. Please don't misunderstand, boy. Remember that the books here are the precious first editions or newest treatises. Copies exist the world over for most of our stock, and anything new is copied most studiously by the scribes for distribution first to the collegiate towns, and then out to other libraries as quickly as possible, Verin said passionately. We do not hoard the knowledge away from people. We simply protect the actual source for the good of the people. All people. Now, tell me again the first rule of understanding. He watched the sudden change of tack and demand for information he had last asked them about an hour ago cause them all to blink. True understanding, the kid started, before the other two suddenly perked up and joined in with him. Comes from judging a work on the whole of its content before forming an opinion. All work should be read in full before discourse, decision or dispute. Verind nodded, satisfied. Good. While our job is not to grade the books, this rule is as important to us as to the scribes and scholars. If we do not protect the pages fully and content is lost, how can any work be judged or discussed in the fullness of truth and understanding? The first rule of understanding underpins the work of every single man, woman and child permitted to live or visit here. Never forget it. Then when do we get to how we protect the books? Girl asked, furrowing her brow petulantly at having to ask the question again for the umpteenth time. Very well, Verin sighed, brushing a stray strand of ochre-coloured hair away from his face as he glanced upwards. It's almost time anyway. You can all weave, and it seems you have used it for physical effects in the past. I just hope you could be precise with your abilities. We're going to be weaving? Kid asked, suddenly much less sure than he had been. And not just watching? Verind nodded and pulled out a handful of magus globes, rolling them expertly over his fingers as he spoke, the blue spectrum light of each playing over his face to cause strange shadows and ripples. We rarely see thieves or pirates up here. We are simply too tough a nut to crack. But the world has far more insidious issues for our books than mere people. Tomorrow, assuming you handle tonight, I will teach you about mould. But tonight our job will be fauna. Tell me what you know about magus creatures. Charles? The boy, Bastian, glanced sidelong at the smaller child, seeking answers the kid seemed all too ready to give. No, Verin said firmly. Not the kid. One of you other two answer for once. Unless, of course, you intend for me to tutor him alone and send you two home. No. Bastian swallowed hard as Charles closed his mouth, and Verin could almost see cogwheels turning in the child's head as he sought knowledge he may not have ever been taught. The poorhouse cared only for output, not education, but some dim bulb seemed to spark behind the boy's eyes, and he tentatively spoke his thoughts aloud. Magus creatures are animals in tune with ether, in the same way weavers are for people. Exactly the same as with us? Can it be that 3 weasels are normal and 1 can weave? Verind asked, clacking 2 of the magus globes together so that tiny sparks of ether discharged from them and curled upward. No, that would be silly, Girl laughed. It would be more like there are 2 kinds of weasel, a normal weasel breed and a magus weasel breed. And the magus weasels can use ether, but they tend to be much rarer. Silly? Verind asked, holding back a smile at the girl's certainty, and her sudden unsure expression with his question. But he moved on instead of pursuing the matter. Why are they more rare? Well, weavers are less abundant than mundane men, so I guess it's the same for them, she suggested, clearly not having considered the question before. Or it's just that we kill 'em more, said Boy. When I was young, my da used to go out for fire rat tails when the weft set in. The cloth house didn't like having 'em around in case they used up any of the Magus globes, so they used to pay for the tails. Very good, Varen nodded with approval. You both make valid points. Magus creatures are indeed more rare than the more mundane variants, but the great works of this place will come to teach you that so long as there is some resource to be exploited, animals and people will come, and change if necessary, to consume it. Of course animals use ether, and of course they seek it out deliberately. The engines, breathed the kid, understanding dawning in his eyes immediately. That's why you wanted us to know how the library flies. It attracts animals that like ether. Especially in the weft, Varen confirmed with a nod. The engines vent in series, one after the other, between midnight and 1 in the morning, when everyone is asleep and the flares and slight tilts in the ground won't bother them. And, of course, that's when the pests that keep making their nests here wake up. Oh no, please don't tell me it's bats. I really hate the way they flap. Varen grinned and stood up, tossing a Magus globe to each of the children for them to catch, before he drew the power out of his own and kept it neatly flowing around him like a tight corona. Well, I have good news for you, girl. We don't get bats. They prefer caves they will not be disturbed in and to poop all over the floor. No, we don't get bats. We get something worse. Flicking a few sparks of ether into both the water and up to the ceiling, Verind woke the lurking swarm just as the bells far, far above started to toll midnight in a sonorous chorus. By the third strike, all 3 kids were already screaming. How are we doing?
Knowing what is about to hit, I'm just sat here quietly smiling.
Yes, you got to see Hevna being created. Poor Aiden was my sounding board as I was putting all this together.
I'm sitting here, seeing a world, and finding my inspiration to create more.
Excellent.
I have so many questions. And it'll take roughly a year and a half of nightly streams to go through them. And even then, Zork will come up with another war crime. Oh wait, we're talking about Hevna. Yes, that too. About the same.
All right, I'm going to step away for just a second and use the restroom before I start reading about the next bit. Ed says, this is great, I'm enthralled, but I also see that this is rougher than your Shoal stuff. Yes, this story was written, it must have been 7 or 8 years ago now.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I'm not ashamed of it, but it certainly isn't written as well as I would write it today. Some of the choices of phrasing, how I've broken down internal thoughts and then external expression, I wouldn't do it quite the same if I did it today. But I like the underlying story I have, so...
It's good.
I have been writing since I was 12 years old, so... But I have certainly learnt a lot in the last 8 years since I did this. Anyway, I shall be back in just a moment. I want a restroom, and then we will read about what they have that is worse than bats. I shall be right back. Gentlemen, do not blow up Twitch, please.
So yeah,
In the meantime,
it has been something like 8 years. Good lord.
yeah. Yeah.
But
This thing has been going on for a while.
it has. Off and on. No
How-
Ed Gauss, no Molotovs, no Zorg juice. She said don't light the place on fire.
That's
Don't be
true.
that gay.
Don't be that guy. Don't light this place on fire. If you need to light things on fire, go talk to Ravik Malthus. He'll help you out.
Show up on Thursdays. That's a stream to be burned to the ground. Which one on Thursday, you ask? Yes. Okay.
Boom.xx trimester.
Okay. Damn it, Ed Gauss. I just heard that Sorry Force of Habit in the Simon Belmont voice from, what is it, Starbomb's Crashervania? Sorry, Force of Habit. F. I need to listen to that song again now. Never fear, Simon Belmont is here to destroy evil monsters. Yeah. It's a good one.
So you didn't blow things up, but now we're in Castlevania.
Because Ed Gauss said something that sparked off the brain cell. Like,
You
it
don't
caused a misfire.
look. It's Ed. We forgive. He's from chat. It's his fault anyway.
Indeed, it is Chat's fault. That's your usual excuse, isn't it, love?
Oh, no, it's not an excuse. It's just the truth. Everything is Chat's fault.
You don't care anymore.
Yep, it's Chat's fault. I didn't do it. Can't blame me.
It's mine for all chicken.
Very Castlevania. Yes, Castlevania has wall chicken that I'm told is technically wall pork. And this upsets me. Alrighty, shall we read some more? Because we have about an hour before we have to vamoose, and we are about halfway through, so...
You have to at least get to the next section and show
Well,
why
we
the
should
kids
be
were
able to
screaming.
finish it, I think, so we will get on with
We
it.
should. But yeah, we need to know why the kids are screaming.
Let us find out.
Scram.
In water, most species of squid were capable of jetting backwards at about 25 body lengths a second. Verind knew this because chasing the damn things in the water channels was 1,000 times worse than trying to catch them in the air, where they could not move so swiftly. Other facts he knew, intimately, including the fact that they had donut-shaped brains with tubes through the middle, odd hooks on the inside of their mantles to let them seal their jet chambers, and they could exude a sticky mucus ink, usually sepia-toned, to annoy and confuse predators. The meddlesome Magus squid, found the world over, could also ink in the air, as they sailed through it on jets of ether, supported by their wide-bladed mantle fins. And it was all Verind could do to maintain a straight face when, after 10 minutes of pure panic, he was still watching the children squealing in disgust as the swarm of about 100 small squids chased them around the vestibule. The damp little creatures persisted in squirting ink and clinging to arms, legs, walls, and anything else they crashed into. Mastering himself, Verind moved towards the top of the vestibule to guard the exit into the other areas of the library up the stairs, snapping ether out in small darts to pierce the bodies of any squid that crossed his vision, dropping them like flies to the ground, where their bodies added to the growing pools of slippery goo. While divinitic weaving was no real use in active effects, the squid were so fine-tuned in their reliance on ether, even a single bolt of added force would short their little brains out and kill them. Any weaver could do that much. Some of the squids hid in the water, now they knew it was not safe in the air of their lair, and their bodies became immediately invisible thanks to the pigments in their skin. Verind ignored them, as they couldn't pass through the grills at the end of the room, and there would be plenty of time to pick them off before the night's end. For now, he was mostly interested in watching how the children chose to handle the situation. If they panicked and ran for the stairs, or started flailing ether all over the place without checking their targets, then there would be no place for them in the library so far as he was concerned. Even less so if they did not help each other or work together. "Ow, ow, ow, get it off!" Girl shrieked, fighting with a squid that had wrapped around her arm, its eyes whirling madly. "How can these things hurt so much?" Boy demanded, shaking an arm ineffectively in the hope of freeing himself. "It's in my eye," Kid whimpered, rushing to a water channel to try and wash the mess off, only to have another squid try to grab him from under the surface. "They have beaks in between all the tentacles, and toothed suckers on each appendage, of course," Verind said conversationally, occasionally eliminating a squid off a child as they passed inside his range. For himself, he used his right hand to weave attacks on the squid, while his left protected his body with a thin veil of ether that shocked anything that came too close. but their brains are quite susceptible to ether overload. Gross! The girl shrieked, ducking behind a pillar to try and hide from the line of charging cephalopods wheeling madly around above her. Verind settled back and watched. As unexpected as the attack was, it wasn't surprising that to start with, the kids were mostly concerned with looking after themselves and trying to get away from the problem. Girl had her hiding spot. Kid jumped into the water and hid under the arch of a water inlet, and as for Boy, he had figured out that if he slammed into a wall, it at least crushed the soft-bodied creatures enough for him to pull them off him. Once the immediate threat was gone, then the children began to marshal thoughts to deal with the problem as a whole. Initially, that meant each of them picking off the squid closest to them now he had clued them in to their weakness. Boy was slow, but everything he hit simply flopped to the floor instantly after being pierced with energetic javelins of ether, drawn from the globe the boy held. Similarly, Kid was taking his time and aiming carefully, though in his case it seemed to be more about making his strikes count, ephemeral as they seemed to be. Girl was much faster, but less accurate and driven by a personal fear of letting another squid grab her, rather than trying to prevent the animals from approaching the exit points. Well, he thought, shaking his head, this isn't the best start. If they get into the library, he said aloud and distinctly, they will eat the exhibits, whether paper or preserved animal. Worse still, if they get into the south wing where the machines for ether study are kept. He let the unspoken issue hang in the air. He could vividly remember the first time he had encountered the squid, which old Libramagus Sendik had antagonised in a similar manner, but during the spin. There had been a huge mother squid with the podlings back then too, and he'd have been dismissed instantly had it not been for his panic exhibiting itself as an area blast of power that had thankfully not hurt anyone else, and thus allowed him to pass it off as purposeful. No matter how one felt about cephalopods, one night of dealing with a panicking squid swarm in mid-air was usually enough to make one allergic to calamari for life. Right now, the children were showing all the signs they were not cut out for the task. But with the memory of his own past in the front of his mind, he waited and gave them time to surprise him. Libramore, can you please throw the spare Magus globes into the centre of the floor? Kid asked a minute or two later, ducking under one of the benches to avoid a stream of squid moving in a school over his head, now that he'd scrambled out of the cold water. Charles, what are you doing? Girl demanded, pulling an errant squid off her arm with difficulty. The flailing creature left red welts in little circles from her wrist to her elbow, which began to bleed immediately. They're hungry, right? Let's get them something to eat, Kid reasoned. Dina, can you round them up and drive them into the middle? Your weaving is much neater than either of ours. Not with them clinging to me, she snapped. I'll zap them off you, Kid promised. Bastian, get ready to send a current through the water, just the length of the channel, no further. I'm not strong enough to just kill them, but I can get them off you if you two can work together and dispose of them. Your control, Dina, Bastian's strength, okay? I'll try, Boy said with a shrug, then slammed his back into another large stone pillar to crush a squid clinging to his back. Remember, you are being assessed, Verind said, watching them intently. Only two of us can pass, Boy said uncertainly, biting his lip and glancing between the other two. That doesn't matter right now, Girl said firmly. I doubt your Da argued with his buddies over who got to kill which rat. All that mattered was protecting the cloth house, right? Right. Verind nodded and threw the remaining 3 Magus orbs he had into the middle of the room. Immediately they were pounced on by the nearest squid, who tangled into a hungry ball around them. Flashes of light arced across the room as Kid indeed focused on relieving his friends of their woes. Then Girl spun into a full-body weave with clearly practised ease, drawing a gentle but insistent ether wind around the edges of the room that began to inch inward. Verind whistled lowly, at the reach she had on the weave, as well as the control. The boy, Bastian, ducked under the vortex so that he was outside of it, and waited as Girl tightened her weave smaller and smaller. Only when the squid were all mustered over the central channel of water did he throw his own Magus globe up into the air, pulling power out of it and the pile in the middle of the squid heap. The boy then concentrated the strands together, pushing them outwards in a weave of etheric lightning that shocked and eliminated the entire group in one swoop, as well as those in the water. Nodding in approval, Verind stepped back involuntarily as the jolt of power stopped just shy of his slippers. Other than the wet squelching sound of squid settling in a pile on the floor, silence descended. Verind let his weave go and raised an eyebrow at the 3 children, all of whom were breathing hard and covered in lacerations. Blood dripped off of each of them, where beaks had scored flesh during the unexpected struggle, and he half expected at least one of them to start to cry. Mucus in open sucker cuts certainly stung enough to warrant it. Instead, the kid hurried over to the other 2, and they actually started to laugh. "Oh, Lights Bastion, you look awful," Girl giggled, wiping the slime off her less injured arm. "Wait until you see your hair," snarked Boy. "It's going to take a week to get the smell of these things out of my nose," Kid said, wrinkling up his face. "I thought squid was a delicacy. They smell like an outhouse." Verind watched them for a few minutes, and the bond of friendship they clearly all shared. Then he shrugged and began to weave once more. The south engine was currently venting for the night, and its discharge was more than enough power for the Libramore to send out double the snakes he had used in the Natural Sciences wing to scoop up the corpses and dump them into the buckets around the edges of the room. Clearing the squid from the water took a little longer, and by the time he was done there were 6 full buckets of dead cephalopods and 3 children staring at him, slack-jawed as he manipulated the water from the channels to wash clear the dirtied stonework until the vestibule resembled its former pristine self once more. "A job is not complete until all clean-up work has been done," he said mildly, knowing the level of control he had just shown was no doubt far in excess of anything the children would have seen before. "In time, they will be able to do that too. If I teach them. I suppose someone has to. For you 3, clean-up means depositing the waste in those buckets on Libramore Darmin's compost heaps. The meddlesome squid may be poor for eating and terrible on our exhibits, but they make excellent fertiliser. After that, clean and dress your wounds carefully. Then you may go to bed." "Yes, Libramore. Is this what you do every night?" Boy asked. "No, as there is too much for me to do alone," Verind admitted. "When there were 3 of us, the numbers of squid never got this high, but now, alone, I can only clean this place every 2 weeks. When I am satisfied you can handle the squid by yourselves, it will become your job to check it daily, so I may focus on other chores." "Then, are we staying?" Girl asked nervously. "You have a long way to go. But if I don't teach you, I'll just have to do all this all over again, with whatever mess they send to me next time," Verind sniffed gruffly, refusing to meet any of their eyes, or register the relieved excitement his words put into them. "We will convene at 3 of the afternoon bells in my office tomorrow to begin basic studies of fungal species. I expect you all to arrive with your sashes and badges properly positioned and displayed next time. If I hear that even one of you has forgotten how to address your fellows while you are representing both the library and the Libramores, it will go very hard for all 3 of you." "All 3? Kid breathed, finally relaxing fully. "Those squids aren't going to move themselves," Verind snapped. 2 buckets apiece, including you, girl, and run along. I have other work to attend without you under my feet." "Yes, Libramore," they chorused, and he could hear them laughing and talking all the way out of the Undercroft. How are we doing?
They got in. Squidly. Yay! I was rooting for them.
For what? The squid?
Yes.
Fair enough.
I always root for the squids.
Ty German says, "I've been enjoying story time." I am glad. We're being very self-indulgent of my nonsense today.
It's good nonsense.
I am glad.
Good. You make the good stuff.
Silicon Soul says, "That went swimmingly."
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Hey!
Wish.
All right, we shall read some more then.
I think so.
6 weeks
Maybe you're
late.
tired of chat and enjoying your stuff.
That is good.
You wanna
And we
leave
do
us
have about
behind.
50 people here, which is genuinely lovely and a very pleasant way to spend a birthday. We do have, after
Hey.
all, the best community on Twitch. And everything's your fault.
This is how you know it's the best.
Yes.
Well, we've talked about this. They know. We know. They like it the way it is. They will never change. None of them. Not one whit.
All right, let's find out what happened to these kiddies. 6 weeks later, Verind found himself sitting and staring at 3 sweets, still present on his table, mocking him. He'd happily eaten an entire box of Rosalian candy in that time, of course, but these particular 3 sweets had become grand as mountains in his short time so far as a tutor. "I'm sorry, Verind, but I don't have any choice in the matter." He harumphed at the intruding voice, grudgingly taking the preferred cup of Saya Libramore Ederic past him as he crossed back from the fireplace and sat down opposite him. Sipping the drink, Verind scowled at the man who had not only decreed he was only permitted to allow 2 students into the book protection apprenticeship, but was also technically his boss. Almost certainly his boss after the vote in a few days' time. "Is it because of the Libra Major's position? Don't want to rock the boat?" he asked, keeping his tone level. "That's rather blunt," Ederic said primly, tightening his grip on his own cup as Verind met his gaze. "It is, but you know I won't judge either way for the answer, as long as you tell me the truth." "I have never been in the habit of lying," sniffed the older Libramore, then sighed. "I suppose the vote is partly to do with it, but even without that, I think we'd be having the same conversation. Politically, I already have the strongest hand for the Libra Major's position when the Scholaris decide, but with or without it, and even if Sendik was still with us, nothing will change that our staff amounts will always be limited by what the library can physically support." Ederic spread his hands and shrugged apologetically, his hard and lined features softening briefly. "It's the price of living on a flying rock." "One mouth soon becomes more if rules are allowed to slip, I suppose," Verind huffed with resignation. "The only leeway is given to the scribes, you know that," Ederic agreed. "Your job is designed for 3, and unless you want to resign yourself, one of the children has to go." "They are a very effective team," Verind said, leaning back in his seat to rub his temples. "They showed that the first night with the squid. And since then, they've been very competent at using what they are each best at to finish jobs in an hour, where it would normally take me half the night." With a grimace, Verind metEderic's impassive gaze and sighed. "I understand, though. How much longer will you give me to decide?" "A week," the Libramore responded instantly. "It seems appropriate to let them know at year's end, no later. But I must say, I'm surprised you're this conflicted. You always said you didn't want to teach." "I don't," Verind snorted instantly and passionately. "But my loyalty has always been to the library and what is best for it. These 3 are young, foolish and brash, but they have potential. Together. You have to decide, Verind. Libra Major Sendik saw something in you, whether you know it or not, and I have faith in his faith. You'll make the best choice, I'm sure, and it will be nice to have a full staff looking after the exhibits again. You've been much overworked this year." "I'm fine," Verind replied defensively. "But I won't deny some help would be pleasant. All right, I'll have my decision sent to you inside the week, but I must insist on being permitted to teach as I see fit in that time. I don't need Malik shadowing me half the time and trying to insinuate I should keep the 2 boys and get rid of Girl. I will find work for him away from the main building, but the sooner you choose, the better it will be for you and for them. Good luck." Verind grunted as Ederic got up and drained the better part of 2/3 of a cup of hot Saya in one go, as was his usual way. Watching the elder Libramore cross to his door, Verind said nothing as he left, and instead went back to staring at the 3 sweets as the latch to his quarters clicked back closed. 3 turn up and I'm only allowed to keep 2. What a crock. The afternoon, when it rolled around, found him as sour as ever when the children knocked on his door. "Come," he called, rising from his armchair, where he had been dozing, to reseat himself at the head of his small table, ready for the day's lessons. Boy, girl and kid trooped in and came to a stop on the rug. Then, in unison, they brought their left hands to their chests and dipped their heads. "Good afternoon, Libramore," they chorused, sashes straight and badges gleaming. "Good afternoon. Take your seats, we have much to do, as usual." 6 weeks had made a lot of difference. The trio had all been fairly well muscled from day one, the poorhouse having been more than happy to put anyone in its care to physical labour where possible. But they had all been thin and somewhat sickly with it, as if their muscles were piano wires, holding on to cracking ivory. A month and a half of truly decent meals, suitable rests, and baths where possible had turned the group from tenacious rats into sleek hunting dogs. Sending any of them back to their old way of life would be borderline criminal in his mind. "What are we studying tonight, Master Verind?" Girl asked eagerly, oblivious to his conflicted thoughts and moods. "Are we going to weave? I've been practicing." "We all have." "Yes, you all have. I haven't seen a squid inside the vestibule in weeks, and Copper has even stopped whinging at me about slime making it through the ducts." The meddlesome squid had only been the start of things, though. Girl had proved herself truly perceptive to the mould problems the book suffered from, and could pick out the as yet untreated A to Z of home gardening from any location, stack or hidden place he could think to put it, unerringly. Boy was doing best with fauna. After the first night, and learning how to deal with the squid, he had gone on to root out a nest of mice that had been eluding Verind for months, and traced what had turned out to be a stray cat that had snuck up to the library on a delivery ship, all the way to a crevice in the amphitheatre no one had even known about before. And then there was Kid. He had adapted to the library best of all, hoarding knowledge from any book Verind gave him like a sponge soaking up water. It didn't matter if it was the life cycle of the papyrus plant, intricate details on airing the various library wings to minimise risk to the books, or emergency procedures in the event of an attack or critical flight failure. He retained information with ease. At first, Verind had assumed that while he would be good at parroting the knowledge back, he wouldn't be good at actually using it. But that hadn't turned out to be true either, as Kid could see the practical applications of his knowledge clearly, and had even come up with some novel solutions to problems Verind himself had never thought of. The only time Kid seemed to falter and lose himself was when it came to weaving, an area in which the child was weaker than his peers, but no less well controlled with what little he could do, and his reach was definitely on par with Girl and Boy. The other two were as keenly aware as he was that Kid was definitely the best of them, but it hadn't seemed to deter them from steadfastly remaining a group of three and supporting each other. Kid would share his book smarts and help the others memorise critical elements, while Girl used her own weaving next to her companions to help them feel the flow necessary to mimic her own successes. Boy, for all he seemed the intellectually stunted of the three, noticed little details that led him to intuitive successes that the others were then able to cue in on. And they never seemed to discuss what they would do when the day came that one of them would have to leave, understanding that Verind would only keep on all three until he knew which two would be best to retain. Whether their willful ignorance on the matter was a result of having grown up in the uncertainty of the poorhouse, or just simply that they had a childish ability to live only for the moment, Verind didn't know. But it wasn't making his job any easier, at least in terms of how to make his final choice. Sighing, he thumped open the huge and well-leafed book on his desk, turning to the W section, where a bunch of papers were wedged into the book, covered in drawings, recipes, and other notes from Libramore protectors going back generations. "Tonight we will discuss the problems of woodworm and how to treat the very shelves our exhibits rest on. Get out your notebooks." On the fourth day of the final week, Verind sat watching the spiders work. Machines made of metal and instructions, they roamed the high-vaulted ceilings of the upper floors on threads made of steel cable, clearing away the webs and insect bodies left behind by their living brethren. Moving with soft clicking sounds and the ticking of cogwheels turning to propel them forward, the small machines roamed the tight ropes above in small numbers, barely keeping the grand painted ceilings clear, let alone clean, while they were in the weft. "I don't think I'll ever get used to those things," Girl shuddered, following his gaze as she approached him. "When the spin returns next year, you'll have to get over it quickly. That's when they bring out the big brass brood mothers to oversee the deep cleaning." Verind extended a slender, bony finger and pointed towards one among 6 other large wooden boxes mounted behind the pillars where they met the ceiling, and the large brass plates covering the holes that were normally there. On each plate, there was an etching of a large spider with a number beside it. "Those look horrifying," she said, averting her eyes from the little silvery robots above, and the layers of their hidden mothers. "On the contrary, the brood mothers are a marvel of etheric technology. Despite their size, they only need a single megascope to power them, and they can coordinate and direct mobs of 20 spiderlings apiece. They're truly impressive to watch, and they even repair damaged steel wires ready for the next weft. I find their clicking very soothing. I feel like we still barely know anything about the library, the girl sighed, setting down the book she had come to shelve before the wings closed for the evening. That's a true assessment, Verind agreed, sitting forward and looking at her properly. You know the bare minimum, partly because there is so much to know, and partly because I have no intention of sharing any of the deeper truths of our home until I know which of you is staying. You really have to send one of us away, came the glum response. Or all of you, he reminded her softly. Yes, or all of us. She looked at him and bit her lip, and then looked away out over the stacks, to where Boy and Kid were busy helping a member of the cleaning staff to buff the brass railings on the lower floor. Currently, they had their respective hands buried to the wrists inside the ammonite shells at the end of the railings. A filthy job Verind had hated when such things had been up to him to clean. The scent of polish hung heavy in the air, a pleasant scent to contrast to the bitter thoughts he could see moving over Girl's young face. You're thinking that you would prefer to leave altogether if you can't stay together, Verind said, smiling when she whirled around to look at him in surprise. How do you know that? She demanded. He simply shrugged with a smile in response. It isn't your choice, I'm afraid. You said you wanted the job, and if I send you all away, Libra Magus Ederic will be very angry. After all, a degree of competence has been observed by people other than myself. It would be an obvious lie to say you were all useless. I want to stay, she murmured, laying her hands on the books she had brought upstairs, caressing their covers through the white gloves she was wearing to protect the precious papers from herself. I like it here. It's better than St. Jenna's. I know. You can't possibly know, she snapped, and he could see the tears welling in the corners of her eyes, brought on by some unknown memory she would carry forever, and never share with anyone. Anyone other than the two boys below, that is. I know, he said again quietly. Where do you think I came from? Verind watched the girl open and shut her mouth a couple of times. It wasn't her fault. He had assumed every single person at the library was from a select family too, once upon a time. Certainly no one in the grounds today treated him like an orphan anymore, and no visitor would have reason to suspect and therefore bring prejudice to their interactions. No one is defined by how they were born or raised, he said, holding her gaze as she blinked away the wetness welling under her eyelids. You are only your own choices. I will be making mine soon, so I suggest you work hard, girl. I have a name, you know. We all do, she pouted, falling back on teenage annoyance rather than consider the future. Yes, you do, Verind agreed. Tomorrow, bring the boy and the kid down to the stream by the amphitheatre instead of my rooms. The squids have relocated thanks to your enthusiastic work in the vestibule. Now run along, girl. For a few moments, the child wavered, almost asking him something, or perhaps almost ready to volunteer something instead. But then the faint call from Kid drew her attention away. Running to the rail, she glanced back at Verind one more time, and then went downstairs. How are we doing?
You are pulling us like a string in a bow.
Sad children's. No one gets split up.
Indeed. Jack basks in the flamethrower.
I have my suspicions.
What are your suspicions?
I'm thinking he is going to go away and is trying to give them his place as a team.
Okay. Well, we shall have to see if we can read to the end and find out what happens. Ty German says there'll be tears by the end of it. Well, do we want to find out?
I think so.
Do I need to kill someone?
Oh, we'll have to wait and see.
Okay. I'll just go get my papers.
Okay. On the fifth day, Verind carried a picnic with him down to the stream. The children were already there when he arrived, up to their knees in the cold wintry water, without seeming to care about the awful chill it was no doubt giving them, even in spite of small icicles hanging off the muddy banks and overhanging decorative bushes. "You'll catch your death of cold in there," he scolded, shivering a little himself as a gust of wind flowed over the top of the slope above them and curved down into the gravel and grass-lined hollow the stream pooled in. "Boy made a fire," said the kid, pointing behind him, and Verid found himself smiling. It was far from the first time any of them had lapsed into calling each other by the descriptors he had assigned them, but it was always charming to him when it happened. He looked over the top of Boy's head, and indeed there was a tall pyramid of sticks built up in a neat safe ring of stones, waiting for a light. "Well, then I suppose it's a good thing I brought marshmallows with me." He relinquished the basket to eager hands as the children scrambled out of the stream, leaving a pile of squid on the far side. He nodded in approval. After this many weeks, he shouldn't need to tell them to get started with work they had already mastered, and it seemed they had taken it to heart. Someone had at least sensibly gone to the vestibule to collect a bucket to put the refuse in, and he could only hope it had been one of the children he had flagged to remain in the apprenticeship programme. "Oh, there's clacky treats from Rasal in here, and sugared rhea pods," kids squealed, delighted. Foods you wouldn't have been able to recognise 2 months ago, Verin thought, smiling as he cleared a rime of snow from the bench under the tree and sat down. "Hey, what's this?" Boy asked, holding up a vial of something red and a pipette. "Gather some of the clean, fresh snow from the top of the banks into cups, and I will show you," Verin smiled. "I asked the chemist to make enough to teach you about year's end in Nofter. They mix this with snow to make a cold, slushy drink. Now pay attention, we have a lot of customs to learn about, and most of them are food." After an hour, and more treats than he would be willing to admit he had been storing for the winter, Verin finally sent them back to the water to clean out the last of the squid, using his own weaving and a pair of magus orbs to waft warm air around the three as they worked, from the fire Boy had sparked to life. When he spotted movement on the path above them, he rose from his seat and waded into the water too, catching squid dodging away from the kids with practised ease. "Well, I suppose I ought to let you three off for the day. Your assessments were technically over yesterday, after all." He looked up as the three suddenly stopped working, all staring at him with a mixture of both surprise, nerves, and hope. It took all of his willpower not to smile or admit a fondness for all of them, even to himself. "And did we—" Girl asked softly, then yelped as the squid she had been holding soundly bit her on the thumb, and she dropped it with a most unladylike curse. "Libra Magus Ederic has your results, but remember, if you have passed, all it means is that you are committed to these lessons for as long as it takes, until I am satisfied you are fit to serve the library as anything other than a student." He dropped the last word, like the curse it technically was, to the staff of the library. Old Sendic himself had always said that the least efficient part of the library was its habit of admitting students. "Yes, Libramore," the three said. "Well then, don't keep lollygagging around here. I have this mess to clean up before dinner, and the Libra Magus isn't going to wait at the top of the slope forever." He watched them spin on their heels, heard the intake of breath from each of three throats, no doubt in response to a second rush of nerves. The girl led the way, scrambling up the embankment in a most unrefined manner, closely followed by her two companions. He sat back, dumping the handful of squid carcasses into the bucket next to him, and watched as they bowed formally to Ederic, the customary motion no longer stilted on any of them after so many weeks. He couldn't hear what the Libra Magus said to them, but it didn't matter. It would be a gentle lecture on the importance of hard work and pride in all you had achieved. The standard words of a man softening a blow before handing over results packages. Boy opened his first, and the whoop he gave out could certainly be heard at this distance, eliciting an unwitting smile from Verind as he wiped ink off his hands. Girl did a little dance as she opened her own parcel and pulled the sheet up, not even managing to get it fully out of the envelope before she was hugging Boy. Their joviality was short-lived, however. Both Boy and Girl, realising within seconds that their own positive results could only have one outcome for their third. Joy immediately became gloom, even for the two who had passed. Kid stood silent. He watched the young man turn his eyes slowly downslope to rest on him. The child's expression was carefully neutral, his eyes alone questioning Verind, searing into his soul. Even without weaving his snakes into existence, Verind could sense and taste the avid disappointment and surprise from the little group above him. Could guess at the thoughts running through their minds. Boy and girl both knew, as he did, that Kid was the smartest of them, the most competent. Silently, Verind held Kid's gaze, watching to see if he would cry or demand an explanation. But he did not. He just stood, still and calm. Marshalling himself to keep his own expression neutral, he raised a finger and beckoned Kid to come down to him, fighting doubly hard not to smile when girl and boy brazenly came too. They were a trio, and he was going to split them up. They might not ever forgive me for that, he thought, and stood up. Were you polite to the Libra Magus? He asked gruffly. Yes, Libramore, they chorused, and he could see Girl about to open her mouth and demand to know why Kid hadn't passed. He silenced her with a raised finger and focused on Kid. What is the first rule of understanding? He asked, taking them back to their first lesson. True understanding comes from judging a work on the whole of its content before forming an opinion. All work should be read in full before discourse, decision or dispute. One cannot be a master of an item's knowledge if one does not know the entire content, Kid answered, promptly but glumly. And yet, I see you have not properly reviewed the papers given you. He stood silently while Kid frowned and checked his pack again. This time, he pulled the paperwork fully out of the envelope so that he could see everything below the denied entry stamp on his application to the Libramore ranks. There was another, smaller envelope attached to the bottom. Girl and boy both held their breath as Kid opened it, scanned the single rich sheet of paper within, then sat down heavily. What is it, Kid? What does it say? Girl asked excitedly, with boy craning over her shoulder. Kid, for his part, just stared up at Verind, hardly able to speak. Really? He asked hoarsely, and Verind nodded. Really, he said, crossing his arms. I only get to sponsor once a decade, so you'd better not waste it, Kid. I expect great things. Yes, Libramore, I won't... Words failed the normally quiet child, and he simply stood up and embraced Verind tightly, almost sobbing with relief as he buried his nose in Verind's robes while he patted him on the head, finally letting himself smile. Where? Boy asked as Girl picked up the letter and read it for herself, then squealed with delight. A scribe! You sponsored Kid to be a scribe! 2 may pass, or all may fail, but you did not abandon each other for your own gain, and Kid taught you almost as much as I did. Remember each other, work hard, and protect the library, Verind said sternly. Yes, Libramore! The other 2 suddenly embraced him, so hard he almost couldn't breathe and had to beat them off with all his usual faux gruffness. Go on, the lot of you! This is not behaviour suitable for juniors or scribes. Go and wash up for dinner. And Kid, you can get rid of this bucket of slop as your last duty to me. I will see you at dinner, and you may have tonight off, girl, boy. Tomorrow, we clean the vestibule aqua at 8 of the bells sharp. What about you, sir? Boy asked, cocking his head to one side. Me? I'm going to go and have a shower. And then I have 3 sweets waiting for me. Run along. He watched them run laughing up the slope and around the edge of the amphitheatre, whooping and yelling, then turned with a smile to Libra Magus Ederic as he came down to join him. I thought you said you didn't know how to be nice to children, Verind, said Ederic casually, the new pin of his Libra Magus rank sparkling in the last glimmers of winter sunlight. I don't, Verind snorted. A nice person would have helped them and given them his own knowledge to succeed, and no doubt followed the rules. 3 enter, at least 1 must leave? How stupid. Everyone is good for something, Libra Magus, but no one achieves their potential without their own desire to do so, and friends to help. They had to work for it, and in the coming weeks they will come to see that I have been far from kind in splitting them up and sending the best of them to another department. I take it you are not concerned about spending your nomination on one of the first applicants ever brought to you? Charles will either make it or he won't, and he will do it on his own merit. I merely open the door. If he lets it slam in his face, it's his nose that will be most put out, not mine. Libra Magus Ederic turned a slow, calculating look on Verind, then gave a soft smile. I see a great future ahead of you, Livermore. Libra Major Sendic would have been most proud. Old Sendic would have scolded me for not getting to this point a month ago. I suppose you're right. Well, you'll just have to do better next time. Over your dead body, sir, Verin said affably. Behind the rising spire of the clock tower, which seemed to vibrate as the bells sounded the 5th hour, the sun finally dipped below the floating rock of the library and plunged them into a deep evening ahead of the rest of Westernland, miles below. Verint bowed to his senior and carried himself up the slope to his office and bedroom, and set his swinging cauldron over the fire to boil. Next to his chair, someone had left the newest work by Grissa Hergen, and his 3 lucky treats sat atop it invitingly. Laughing, Verin sat down and popped the first in his mouth. The end.
Excellent. Like that. Feels deserved. I would have been mad if the kids would not have attained some sort of a cohesiveness of unit. Do you know how hard it is to get a team that actually likes being a team?
Yes.
You can hear the servicemen just yelling. Like, that would have been neglect. I would have flogged the man if he would have wasted talent.
Well, good news. He did not waste talent. He just put talents where they were best used.
Oh, and so he did get his treats, didn't he?
He did. He did get to have his nice treats at the end, all 3 of them. Which, talking about literary techniques, etc., things that were mentioned at the beginning, his love of cheap novels, the 3 sweets, you bring it back through, you put it in at the end, etc., So even 8 years ago, I had some idea of some literary techniques.
That was excellent.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. That is a story of Hevna. I like it because I like the core that I worked with, even if I would perhaps write the prose differently these days. But I feel like it's also a decent enough intro to the setting. You get to understand the magic and the way fauna works and people, what weaving is, and you get a little bit of a flavour of one of the places in the setting. So hopefully it was enjoyable on many levels.
Joy achieved.
Hooray!
Stress levels reduced by 7.5%.
Well, that is also nice, and there's nothing like a good story for easing stress.
Yes.
It says good setup for the twist at the end. Yeah. I think my only regret with it is I don't know how I could do it differently, but the twist at the end isn't something that the reader can hope towards because there's nothing in the prior prose that gives an indication that that's something that Verind can do. But I think if it became clear that Verind could nominate someone to become a scribe earlier in the story, it gives away the ending. So I'm not sure how I would fix that. But it is always a nice thing when you just drop like a little tiny hint somewhere early on that readers might pick up, and it gives them sort of something to hope for as they get towards the end. And that helps to increase the dramatic tension for the reader so that when you get the reveal at the end, it feels even better as you read it, and it confirms the little thing that you picked up on. But I don't know that I could do that in this story without just instantly giving away what's going to happen.
Am I allowed an observation of my own taste?
Absolutely.
I think I would have been fine with him giving up his spot. And it would have been an interesting twist if he would have got a new job instead the way it was ended. It's good the way it was ended. I think that if the tutor would have got his own way out while leaning on the I'm leaving because they can do stuff I can't do, it would have been bittersweet, but it would also be interesting to see how he moves on. And again, it's not to say your solution was not good. I'm just saying you put a solution forward, and it would have been interesting to see what it would have.
Yeah, I think it could have been written the other way as well. I mean, I know when I was writing this, I really wanted to play on the whole idea of the setup is seen through to the end. Only two can stay and sort of really play that through. But you're right. That would be another way you could handle this sort of story, is the tutor gives up his spot, etc., etc. I mean, if he gives up his spot for them to become the three and he still has to train them while he's training in his new role, would have been the way to handle that, Ed. But yeah, it's one of those things, and it's one of those things that's interesting with writing, is when you come to a problem and looking at different ways to solve it. I knew that I wanted to play specifically with the, there's three kids. They clearly get along well together. They come from this very disadvantaged background. They've had a taste of what life can be like when you have better circumstances and you put the work in for it. And there's that looming threat in the reader's mind of one of them's going to have to go back to that. And Verint himself makes the point that, it's borderline criminal to want to send kids back to that's not okay, and that gives the dramatic tension. And I wanted to pay that off with at the beginning you are told two can stay, one must go, or all must go, and at the end that's still true. Two can stay and one must go. It's just that he doesn't have to go back to the poorhouse. He goes to a different department instead. So yeah, I had fun writing it some years ago. I have other short stories I want to write. I have one that I want to write as an homage to a book I very much enjoyed growing up, which will be just hilarious if I ever get around to writing it at this point because of recent events. Growing up, one of my favourite book series was the Black Stallion book series. So one of the short stories I wanted to write is following a female journalist from Westernland who gets sent to the desert kingdom of Nyret to investigate an archaeological dig. And effectively, she ends up gifted a horse and starts thoroughbred racing in setting. This is where that comes from. I have wanted to write that story since before Uma Musume was even thought of. And now I'm a massive Uma Musume fan, so I feel like I have to write this story at some point.
No, you'd write a story. Right. Whatever will you do?
Try and find time. That's the problem. That is always the problem, is finding the time.
Yes. We're also drawing a comic book.
Yeah,
yes.
I want to draw a comic book. We've got the audio book for Hungry for the Wolf to finish. I've got work for text I need to get finished. I've got commissions to get finished. I need more hours.
True. So, maybe Mo knows Trazen. He's got the buddy of his who has a time-traveling device.
Oh, that would be ideal if I could just... Oh, yeah, that would be wonderful.
I bet Mo knows someone. Hello. Someone is saying hello.
Oh, it's TK. Hello, TK. Welcome in. I hope you've had a good day.
Welcome, TK. Yes. Do you know anyone with a chronosphere, an immortality device, something to allow us to stretch time a little bit?
God, I wish.
I mean, I would go so far as to say I would take the time sphere in Mage the Ascension, warts and all, and work with that. I really would.
Oh, it's slipping my mind. What is the name of the guy who is responsible for all the time shenanigans in the Legacy of Kain series?
Legacy of Kain? All right. Oh, wow.
Because that's what I fear would happen, is it would be somebody like that. Why can't I remember his name?
You'd be better equipped to remember it than I would.
Yes,
I've
I
never
know.
played the game.
It's been a bit. I only played the one where you play both Kain and Raziel at the same time.
If there was one game I could get remade, I would love the original Blood Omen to have a proper remake, because the atmosphere of the original Blood Omen, that level of gothic narration, just mwah! And there's nothing else that's quite like it. Nothing else quite like it whatsoever, and it makes me very, very annoyed. Very, very annoyed. I can pronounce words, I swear.
Noise is better. I would. I think I would go for noise.
Mobius the Wizard, thank you. Yes, him. That's what I'm worried would happen if we mess with time shenanigans. Tired German says, as someone who has illustrated the equivalent of a comic book, let me tell you, keep your style mass producible for the long run. We're planning on making adorable little simple chibis to do the comic with for our 40k game. So we are bearing that in mind.
They're bearing something. Gifts, maybe. And, sharpened knives.
I remember Rob doing that game with Bowser. I am very pleased to hear that has happened on this channel. It is such a unique game. And for me, it's a cozy game. I love the feel of the original Blood Omen. It's one of those things where I can put like somebody doing a long play where they don't talk over it. I can put that on a second monitor and just have it playing in the background while I'm working because I just love the feel of that setting. They didn't finish it though. That's probably not surprising, but that is a shame because it's very, very good. It's very good, and we would not have gotten some of the games that we've had in years since if it didn't exist. And it's just such a shame that it's never going to get a remake because it deserves it.
Are we tracking that Red likes to hear gothic vampire horror as her cozy sing-along time?
Shocking, isn't it? No one would ever expect that of me. Please pay no attention to my avatar. Oh, Will the Great did them games as well. Excellent. Pleased to hear it. Because all the other ones, like a Blood Omen 2, obviously the Soul Reaver series, those get a ton of attention. But the original Blood Omen, I want that game remade. It will never happen. Alrighty, we are at 10 to the top of the hour, where BB should be coming to play Xenonauts with Mr. Tex himself, to the best of my knowledge. I haven't seen anything saying otherwise today. And normally, if BB's going to be out, she'd have let us know by now. So you guys should have BB shortly to entertain you through the rest of the afternoon before the farm crew's here later on today. I will probably be kicking about on Sunday, and tomorrow... birthday 40k game, so I won't be here at all.
Yes. We're going to the pets bottle, and maybe discount Dan's Xeno artifact spot, discount Dan's
Xenotech Emporium. Yes, we definitely need to go to the Xenotech Emporium. And I just love the fact that there is a pet shop and an entire table for it now, because I suddenly remembered that Gyrinxes are a thing.
Yes, indeed. Maybe somebody wants to roll a d25 and just check out what they would get.
Chat, first person to roll a d25 gets to find out what pet they're getting. Thank you for the birthday wishes, Wilf. I appreciate all of you putting up with one of my silly stories today.
It's a good story.
Yeah, I enjoyed writing it.
It's a fun story. It's also somewhat wholesome.
Yeah, it was intended to be wholesome by the end. Yeah, you just, sometimes it's nice to just write something pleasing with a happy ending. Night Owl says 10.
Night Owl says 10. Night Market Pet Shop. Right. Number 10. Oh, the question. Number 10 is the question. Discount on Xenotech and Xeno adjacent Tech Emporium and distributor LLC, no liability corporation. You bought it, you deal with it. Yeah, that is incredibly accurate. Void anemone, the question. Classification, unknown. Aquatic or atmospheric, indeterminate. Adapters Biologist classification request submitted 3 times. It is still pending. A soft thing. It floats approximately 2 inches above any surface without apparent mechanism. Its colors shift between pale translucent and faint blue-white bioluminescence. It has no visible sensory organs and nothing that functions obviously as a mouth, but it responds to sound the same way to suggest listening, and it responds with distress and responds with distress to light, which the owner has found out on a number of occasions to be quite useful. Origins: salvaged from a derelict Eldari vessel in the Sheer. It was sealed in a chamber with 7 others of its kind. It is the only one remaining. The owner does not discuss what happened to the others and has noted in her manifest that she does not know. How to kill: atmospheric, not aquatic, despite appearances. Standard ship atmosphere is adequate. It doesn't appear to eat in any documentable way, but the owner has observed it becomes imperceptibly healthier in households with regular conversation and dislikes prolonged periods of silence. It responds to occupants' distress with bioluminescence. The mechanism is not understood, but the consistency is documented. Handle with cupped hands only, and only when necessary. It is extremely fragile by touch. Keep away from warp-adjacent equipment. The owner has strong instinct about this she cannot substantiate. From the owner. I've had it for 4 years. It had never asked me of anything I could identify, but every morning it greets me with a little bright light. I think it likes being here.
That is adorable. It is a squishy. Number 10 is a squishy.
Yes, it is a void anemone. And its code name, The Question.
Adorable. So yes, next time we are here, we will have to let you guys know what happens on our fun adventures next time, and hopefully there'll be more Shoal. If not, there's always more Hevna. I have like an entire first novel drafted that I can inflict on people. This is a threat.
This is a taunt.
Alrighty, we are going to get out of here for now. BB is up next. Have a wonderful weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Anything final from you, gentlemen?
I've had enough. I mean, I can have like 24 more of these. So better take me away.
All right. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to clear off. Have a good one. Goodbye.